Welcome to Queens and Citi Field. In the waning days of July, it's the site for a National League showdown between two teams with playoff dreams. The Cardinals started off the second half with 7 straight wins. But Albert Pujols, Matt Holliday and company are in a tight race in the NL Central. Tonight, the Redbirds sent left-hander Jaime Garcia to the mound, looking for the 10th win of his rookie season. Meanwhile, the Mets are a team in turmoil since the break, and the Amazons know it's time to find themselves. But David Wright and his gang are back where they play their best ball at home at Citi Field. Tonight from steamy New York City, it's Wednesday Night Baseball presented by Captain Morgan. And from Citi Field in Queens, Mets fans are still hoping their ball club can get hot too. The Mets knocked off the Cardinals in Game 1 of the series last night. The offense finally waking up to score 8 runs. And the great Johan Santana takes to the mound tonight to try to make it 2 in a row. Now St. Louis was locked in a first-place tie with Cincinnati in the Central coming into tonight. But the Reds beat Milwaukee this afternoon. Come Sunday, just 2 months remain in the 2010 season, so it's never too early for a wild card snapshot. Hi, everybody. Welcome to New York. Great to have you along. 62 games remain for both the Cardinals and the Mets. I'm Dave O'Brien, alongside the former National League Cy Young Award winner, Rick Sutcliffe. And Sut, there was actually a little bit of question about who might start this game for the Mets, and they decided to give the ball to the left-hander who has won 2 out of every 3 career decisions.
Well, there was no question on our mind who should start the ball game tonight. The Mets coming into play tonight are 6.5 games out. Johan Santana is healthy. He's their ace. He needs to pitch every 5th day. 130 and 65 in his career. He's been even better than that in the second half of the season. And when you look at his numbers in the month of July, OB, he's been the best pitcher in baseball. He's 3-0 with an ERA of 0.71, going for another win tonight.
So it is odd to see at this point in the season Albert Pujols batting below 300. He's hitting 296 coming into Game 2 tonight with the New York Mets. Now, the man who follows him in the St. Louis Cardinal lineup, Matt Holliday, has been on fire. He has hit in 12 consecutive games.
It is kind of strange to see Albert Pujols hitting over 300, but for me, it's kind of like when you hold a cork underwater. You know that eventually it's going to pop up. When you look at the other numbers, he's 2nd in the National League in on-base percentage. He's 4th in slugging percentage, and he's as dangerous as they come with runners in scoring position. But for me, I think the real key to the National League Central is going to be Matt Holliday. He has got to stay hot down the stretch. He's been a line drive machine since a year ago when he became a Cardinal. He's going to have to continue that.
Well, obviously, Santana, whenever he pitches for the Mets, casts a very, very big shadow. But there's a youngster on the mound tonight, the rookie lefty for the Cardinals, Jaime Garcia. He has the National League's 2nd best earned run average. He goes tonight. It's Game 2 from Citi Field here in Flushing, New York. A very pleasant night here in New York City, 85 degrees as we come to you from Citi Field, the home of the New York Mets, who are trying to get it together. It has certainly been a fascinating season for the Mets. There's Albert Pujols right in the heart of the lineup, of course, for St. Louis, hitting 296, 23 homers, 70 RBIs in what is considered a down year to this point for Albert. Of course, plenty of Cardinals were on hand in Cooperstown for induction weekend, and Redbird legends were asked about Albert Pujols and the possibility he could leave St. Louis when his contract is up.
My prediction is he wants to be a Cardinals. He may want to be the greatest Cardinal of them all. He has to challenge the Stan Musial, the Bob Gibson, the Lou Brocks of the world, and he's done a pretty good job with that. So, you know, somewhere down the line is what you want to leave as your legacy. And I don't think you want to be jumping around from ball club to ball club because you made a lot more money. Money is spent and gone, but the legacy itself stays on for generation to generation.
At the end of the day, it is a business. And I think people understand that it is a business. Now, for us that have had the opportunity to watch Albert play, we're going to be very selfish and say, hey, you know what, he's one of ours and we don't want to see him go. And we certainly don't. But I, as an ex-player, understand that it is a business. They're not going to be able to pay everyone.
I tell you what, for me, it's time for the St. Louis Cardinals to step up. I mean, they've taken care of a lot of people. It's time for them to step up with Albert Pujols. I just think about there at the All-Star game, when looking at all the other players, how they watched everything that he did. It's a lot like it had to be back when Babe Ruth was playing in those All-Star games, the way people look at Albert Pujols in this day and age.
Well, they hope he doesn't disappear, as he just did on camera there, as we give you a look at the starting lineups brought to you by Pizza Hut. It'll be Felipe Lopez at the top of the order. John Jay, who's been a very nice surprise in right. Pujols followed by Holiday, and then Yadier Molina, who handles Santana pretty well.
Well, and that's the reason we're going to highlight him here in the lineups. I mean, you could always go with Albert Pujols. The numbers are always there, but he's really the only other guy that has given Johan Santana trouble.
Facing the left-hander Santana, who is 8-5, an ERA of 2.79, and he has yet to take to the mound here. In fact, he is the only New York Mets. And Blanco, his catcher, Henry Blanco, is waiting alongside Darrell Cousins, and here he comes. Santana in no rush to get to the hill, but you know what? Everybody here in New York doesn't mind waiting for him to waste pitching in the month of July. Sudhey has been absolutely spectacular this month. It's been one of the greatest individual months of any New York Met pitcher.
Well, you know what? And he's got a chance to close it out in style with an opportunity for the Mets, only for the first time since interleague play, to win back-to-back decision. There was some questions as to who was starting pitcher was going to be tonight. We felt like he was going to be our guy 2 weeks ago. When you've got a chance to win back-to-back ball games against the Cardinals, you got a chance to possibly get the lead to 5.5. Johan Santana's got to be the guy.
It's not that guy who's walking off the hill. He's done for the night. He threw his pitch. But Santana in July, 3-0, a 0.71 ERA. He has not allowed a run here at Citi Field in his last 18 innings coming in. He's been a little bit unlucky, though, this month with a couple of no decisions. But Doc Gooden, you go back to September of 1985, he threw 38 innings in the month of September and did not give up a run. 156 batting average that particular month. Well, Santana's just been tremendous.
Well, in his 3 seasons as a New York Met, in his home starts, his ERA has been 2.38. And talking to their pitching coach, Dan Worthen, before the ball game, what's the key? I mean, he was 1-3 in June. How did he turn it around? Dan Worthen said it's real simple. He's healthy. The knee's not cranky anymore. There's some freedom in his elbow from the surgeries that he's had. He feels good. He's got to be the guy out there every 5th day for Jerry Manuel.
Well, he's gone back to being a fastball pitcher and not an off-speed guy. He's not going to throw 95, 96 anymore like he did in his Minnesota days.
But he's going to touch 92 and 93. And when the changeup is 77 to 78, that's the difference that you need. When the fastball is 85 to 86, you've got problems, and that's been the case, as you mentioned, for Johan.
Well, the Mets, of course, as a team have had problems. Nobody has to tell the manager, Jerry Manuel, that. There's been a lot of attention about maybe he's losing his job, and Howard Johnson, his hitting coach, possibility that Howard Johnson might get fired. It was really fascinating to see Fred Wilpon, the owner of the Mets, spend a lot of time around the batting cage in the hours before the game, talking with Howard Johnson, talking with some of the Mets. You almost never see that with a team owner. It's really a hands-on sort of an hour or so.
Everybody was trying to figure out what they were talking about. For me, you think about when Jerry Manuel took over in 08, he did well. And 09, you know, they fell apart because of injuries. They should be talking about him fighting for first place in the National League East rather than his job.
Swinging a line drive, base hit into center field on the very first pitch from Santana, and Felipe Lopez is on. He went 2 for 5 last night, hitting 271 coming in, and a quick start here for the Cardinals. Here's a look at the Mets defensively now. The outfield at the top. Pagan in left. Beltran has won 3 golds. Francoeur, an outstanding arm, of course, in right field. On the left side of that diamond, it's Wright with 2 Gold Gloves. Reyes has surprisingly never won one. Castillo's won 3. Mike Hessman just in for the Mets, a longtime minor leaguer, and Blanco behind the plate doing the catching of the 31-year-old left-hander from Venezuela. And here's John Jay. Really hit the ball well. The youngster at 378 with 3 home runs. A rookie was 1 for 5 last night. He's been starting a lot lately and gets the nod in right field tonight.
You know, a lot of times you might think that Jay would be up there to get down the sacrifice bunt.
Jay takes one a little bit high for a ball, and a count 2-0.
Let Albert Pujols come up with a runner in scoring position. We've seen how terrific those numbers have been. Well, the other number you need to think about is that Albert Pujols leads the majors by a lot in intentional base on balls. You sacrifice bunt here, you take the bat out of Pujols' hand.
Jay does good work against left-handers as he looks at a strike. 25 years old, out of the University of Miami, where he was a 3-time All-American. Look at this, 429 against left-hand pitching.
Well, and he's also been a lot more patient than he was earlier in the year when the Cardinals brought him up. He only had 1 or 2 walks the first trip to the big leagues. He's had a lot more since.
Lopez at first base, not a big lead, not running, and it's a foul tip there. Of course, most guys would be pretty comfortable in a catbird seat hitting in front of Albert Pujols. You know you're going to see really good pitches.
Yeah, you really are, and you're going to see a lot of fastballs because by design the starting pitcher, whoever it is on the mound's not going to walk you. But Tony La Russa has talked from the very beginning when he got Albert Pujols, the key for him to be successful is to get Pujols' bat into the game.
Jay runs pretty well. It'd be tough to double up. A slicing liner backing up Pagan. And Angel Pagan with a catch for the out. That'll bring up Albert with a runner at first base.
Just kind of thinking about the body of work for Tony La Russa since he took over these Cardinals in '96. I mean, you can say what you want about him, but he has outlasted a lot of other managers in the National League Central. And OB, as you well know, he's won everywhere he's ever been.
Well, headed to the Hall of Fame one day. Of course, the Cardinals just put a manager into the Hall of Fame, Whitey Herzog. We'll talk about Whitey throughout the broadcast tonight. Our congratulations to the terrific former skipper of the St. Louis Cardinals. Here's Albert Pujols. He is 11 home runs away from 400 career homers. He's at 23 this season. He's driven in 70, but he's sliding right now. He's in a 1-for-19 skid after going 0-for-5 last night.
Talking with a lot of the players before the game, they were saying that the problem is because the team has been struggling offensively, and when they're pitching around Albert, he's not near as patient trying to help the team out.
Has not had a great month of July, certainly by his standards, as he pops that one foul back out of play. 247 for the month with 5 home runs, although just the other night he made an appearance here in New York on the David Letterman show.
How about that, huh? And he was funny. He about charged the mound. I saw the first pitch when he was standing out there in the middle of the street. He got drilled with. I mean, he wasn't really drilled, but he had a great time with that. And,
with Dennis Leary, who was also on the show. He's a big Red Sox fan, and he was pitching, so to speak. Pitching to Albert. Matt Holliday on deck, runner at first, 1 man out, just getting started here at Citi Field tonight. And a high pop up on the right side into the outfield, backing up Castillo. Plenty of time. 2 down. So Pujols now 1 for his last 20.
Well, and you look at the last 2 pitches that he saw from Santana. Both of those pitches, when he's swinging the bat well, are balls that he can drive. Look at that, up and out over the plate. But you could see clear there. Watch him open up. Watch his hips fly open. They're gone. They're gone before the ball gets deep into the strike zone, and that is not Albert Pujols when he's confident. Right now he's up there just simply trying to do too much.
K-Zone brought to you by Denny's, and you can really read it on Albert's face. Now, he was having a great time with Letterman. As Holliday swings to the first pitch, it's a high fly into left field, backing up Pagan. Still on a run, turning around, it is gone! Home run from Matt Holliday, make it 13 in a row, and a tremendous way to extend a hitting streak. His 19th home run of the season. He's as hot as anybody right now. And the Cardinals launch themselves into a 2-0 lead.
Well, you just go back to the middle of June when all of a sudden he's hitting around 280. He launched himself well over 300. He's been as hot as anybody in the National League since that point during the season. Take a look at this. Right when Santana battles to get Albert Pujols out, you got 2 outs. You only got 1 guy on. You think you're out of the inning. You make 1 mistake, and Matt Holliday makes you pay.
And he only threw 1 pitch, and that was also the case with Lopez leading off the ball game with a first pitch swinging single into the outfield. So the Cardinals clearly establishing their trend tonight. Go early against Santana, and a line drive base hit on an 0-1 pitch by Yadier Molina. So they have come out gunning for the lefty. And Holiday all the way over the fence.
How about that? In his last 5 starts, Johan Santana with an ERA of 0.71. And with one swing of the bat, Matt Holliday is able to turn all of that around.
So with all the raving we did about Santana being great in July, were those somebody else's numbers? Because he has got knocked around here right away. 2 singles and a homer brings up the slumping Colby Rasmus. 1 for his last 25. Although 266, 16 homers, he goes after the first pitch. He gaps that one. Pagan won't get it. It's up against the wall. Molina into third. They're going to hold him there, and a good move because Reyes came up gunning with the cutoff throw, but it's a double for Rasmus. And there's no question they have decided to swing right away against Santana, and it's working.
Well, and there's no question in my mind that third base coach Jose Oquendo, with 2 outs, wanted to try to score the run. He saw the ball get to the wall. Take a look at Rasmus here. The location not there for Santana once again. The ball's into the gap. You see the backs of the outfielders. As a third base coach, you're going to wave everybody. But all of a sudden, when he saw the throw get to Reyes, the cutoff man, you mentioned the strong arm of Jose. He knows that Yadier Molina, he runs like a Molina. The only thing he can't do on a baseball field was that. Jose Oquendo made exactly the right decision.
Well, remember, Tony La Russa bats the pitcher 8th, so they're going to walk Ryan here. This will load the bases. Garcia will then come up to bat, and here's a spot where it probably burns La Russa to not have his pitcher batting in the 9 spot. Skip Schumacher, the second baseman, is the guy batting 9th.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't think Tony's going to be doing this much longer. You're exactly right. This is a big spot in the ball game right now. He gets bit by it right here. And in the ball game in Chicago at Wrigley with Chris Carpenter, his spot came up in a tie ball game. Tony had to pitch hit for him. That game too went into extra innings. So, you know, it's an experiment. Tony's tried to do some things a little different. As we mentioned earlier, say what you want about him. He does some things a little different. Most of them work out. Right now, this is not.
And you see Garcia without an RBI, without a home run, a 188 batting average. Man on deck is Schumacher, who does hit for a living. Goes after the first pitch, though. He stays with the plan. There have been 3 hits on the first pitch here in the first inning for St. Louis, and 1 hit on the second pitch against Santana.
Both of these starting pitchers tonight can swing the bats. They're both very athletic. They field their position well, and more times than not, they'll put it in play.
He rolls that one foul off his body, and a count 0-2 on Garcia. Well, the Cardinals, when they score first, tend to win the ball game. 39-10, it leads the majors, and they're up 2-0 on the strength of 4 hits and a walk. Although an intentional pass. 0-2 on Garcia. Bases all loaded up for St. Louis. Garcia trying to nudge one through, but takes a pitch outside, and it's 1-2.
That last pitch shows you that the elbow of Johan Santana is 100% healthy. He normally won't throw a slider unless Albert Pujols or Matt Holliday is standing at home plate. If that elbow's feeling good, he'll use that pitch more as he did there.
1-2. He won't chase. 2 balls and 2 strikes. So regardless of what happens here, it's a pretty long inning to start off the ball game for Manuel and his starter.
And I think it's a great vote of confidence for Jaime Garcia. These 2 guys hooked up back in April. We'll tell you about that a little bit later.
Pitch number 22 spoiled by Garcia. So he's going to make his fellow left-hander work a little bit harder. Santana with very good career numbers against the Cardinals. Only 4 starts, but 2-0, an ERA of 2.03. But they have jumped him. Felipe Lopez setting the tone with his single on the first pitch. 2-2, fouled off again. It does look like Garcia has a little bit of an idea what he's doing up there.
You know, I was talking with Dave Duncan earlier this afternoon at the hotel, and he talked about this kid being a competitor. He said he's an athlete. He's got 18 assists already out there in his first full year at the big league level. Leads rookie pitchers in the National League in almost every category.
He's only struck out 8 times, so he tends to put the ball in play. It's inside, and he's run it full. How about this? 3-2. on the pitcher.
And you know what? If you're going to do some damage, here's a spot that you can. You know that it's going to be a strike by design. You know it's going to be a fastball. And I'm shocked Johan Santana not going to the stretch here. Watch the jump that everybody's going to get.
Runners take off, and that one is flicked foul off to the left. He'll have to do it again. So he's going to throw at least 9 pitches to Jaime Garcia, the Cardinals starter. He is making Santana work overtime for this out.
Well, and there's a lot of times, pretty much the last month of the season for Santana, 9 pitches has been a complete inning, not just one at bat.
Garcia has fouled off 5 pitches. Runners go, ground ball to the middle. Reyes can't get it. 1 run is in. 2 runs will score. Molina and Rasmus. That makes it 4-0. And Tony La Russa is an absolute genius. What an at-bat Garcia had.
Well, it certainly does help when your starting pitcher can swing the bat. Chris Carpenter can hit a little bit. Wainwright can hit a lot. And Garcia proves the point right here that when you put it in play, you give yourself a chance. I am shocked there, though, that Reyes does not knock that ball down. You knock it down, it's the pitcher running down the first. With his arm, you might be able to make that play. But Reyes is able to get there, but then it really just looks like he falls down. I mean, he completely loses the control of his body there on a play that, well, he's one of the guys that could have made that.
You wonder if he even had to dive for that, and if that's what cost him, because it looked like it hopped right over his glove. So what an at bat for Jaime Garcia's first 2 RBIs, and extends the inning to the number 9 man Schumacher with runners at first and third and 2 men out, and 4-0 St. Louis. His last 5 starts, look at his first inning. And tonight already he's allowed 4 earned runs in the first. 0-1 pitch drops in for a strike. Back to Garcia now. That was a 9-pitch, 2 RBI single. And helps himself to a 4-0 lead here against Santana and the Mets. A lot of these fans haven't even sat down. Into the dirt, stopped by Blanco. 29 pitches and counting for the lefty. Holiday with that 2-run bomb, his 19th homer.
All of the excitement that they had when they left this ballpark last night, thinking that these Mets could actually get back into this thing. Santana on the mound, and Matt Holliday with 1 swing.
Tapped up with it right, throws late, safe at home, safe at first. 5-0 St. Louis. Skip Schumacher just laid the bat on it. Sounded like he broke his bat, and it winds up an infield RBI single to bring in Brendan Ryan. 5-0 Cardinals.
David Wright knew that Schumacher was getting out of the box in a hurry. He just barely was able to make contact with that. You could hear the bat break, but when David Wright couldn't get it out of his glove, look at the hesitation here. He doesn't have a good grip. He does the right thing. I mean, if you try to throw it without a good grip on it, it might go down the line and you have all kinds of more problems. He re-gripped it there. Schumacher was able to beat it out. A 5-0 lead for these Cardinals.
RBI base hit for Schumacher as he hustled up the first base line.
That's why Tony La Russa tries to play him as much as he can. That's the kind of effort you get day in, day out with Skip Schumacher.
So here's Lopez batting for the 2nd time in the top of the first for the Cardinals. He really got them rolling with a base hit on the first pitch and scored their first run. And he lays off high, ball 1. 5 runs on 6 hits for the Cardinals. Boy, is this unexpected, the way Santana has been sizzling in the month of July. One of the great individual months in Met history.
Well, and for me, you were easily talking about the National League Pitcher of the Month. But all of a sudden now you put these numbers along with the rest of them, and it will not be Johan Santana.
Yeah, all of these earned.
I doubt if there's anybody even in the bullpen for the Mets right now, as you saw Dan Worthen go to the phone.
And there are 2 out. 2-0 hit sharply up the middle for a base hit. Here comes Garcia rounding third. They're going to bring him in. He will score to make it 6-0. The second hit in the inning for Felipe Lopez. And Santana and probably Manuel too are hearing it here in Flushing.
All I can think about right now is the owner for the Mets being out there before the ball game. Something that you hardly ever see in baseball, and for him to be watching what's going on right now, all of the talk they've had about changes being made, you know there's more talk right now.
Here's John Jay, 0 for 1 with a fly out. He rips a line drive into right field. Schumacher into third. They apply the brakes there. It's Frank Court throwing, one of the best in the business, but that's going to load the bases. And the hits keep on coming here for the St. Louis Cardinals. The bases jammed. 11 men have already come up to bat, son.
Well, and we've seen the problem has been all along with the location. He missed with a fastball to Holiday. Holiday deposited it into the bleachers in left center. All you really have to do is look at the glove of Blanco. That's really the first time he's come close to the location. That was not a strike. Jay goes down and get it after the base hit by Lopez. You would imagine that once again Albert Pujols is going to be intentionally passed, but then you look behind him, there's the guy that started all this.
6 runs on 8 hits and not done yet, because here comes Albert Pujols and Ed Holiday. Maybe 2 down and no place to put the number 3 hitter for the Cardinals and a 3-time MVP, taking ball 1. Now, the reigning National League MVP has really been the victim of his own success. Strikeouts are up. His slugging percentage is down. His season by his standards has been rather pedestrian. Takes one up and in, to count 2-0.
Look at that velocity, though. When we talked about him being healthy, Dan Worthen saying that's been the key. 92, 93 miles an hour with it. That fastball just 89 miles an hour.
How about the possibility of Albert Pujols making 2 outs in 1 inning? First time up, he popped out to the second baseman. And yet his team leads 6-0.
I'll go out on a limb. That has never happened before.
Career with the bases loaded. Obviously he has been very, very good, and as a Cardinal at every base. Schumacher, Lopez, and Jay. Albert trying to bust a 1-for-20 skid. Swinging a liner center field, backing up. Beltran makes the catch, and that ends the carnage. Well, Santana, remember, was late getting out to the pitcher's mound, but they jumped him early. And they score 6 times. Holiday with the big blow, his 19th home run of the season. Great start for the Cardinals. Ugly for the New York Mets. Forgive the New York Mets and Jose Reyes if they have a stunned look on their faces. They are suddenly down 6-0, and they haven't even swung the bats yet. Facing Jaime Garcia, left-hander tonight, as we take a look at the starting lineups presented by Pizza Hut. You saw Reyes at the top, Luis Castillo, Angel Pagan, then David Wright, who has really carved up lefties.
Take a look at that, leading the National League this year, almost 400 against a left-handed pitcher. He's over a 350 career hitter in those situations. And you think about the Mets, they got hot in June. When David Wright got hot, he needs to do it again.
Well, if not for Steven Strasburg, Garcia could be the National League's most talked about rookie pitcher.
9-4. You take a look at that ERA. Only the San Diego Padres have a lower ERA in all of baseball than the Cardinals. Garcia has been one of the real contributing factors.
And he has a 6-0 lead. Jose Reyes will lead it off at 277. He's hit in 8 consecutive games. Switch hitter will take ball 1. Now the Mets seem to go as their speedy leadoff man goes. If he doesn't get on, they typically will lose the ball game. It's been a strange season for him. Remember, first came the thyroid issue that cost him the start of the season. Then Jerry Manuel forced him into the 3rd spot in the lineup. He was uncomfortable there. And once he went back to the leadoff spot, he has hit pretty well and even earned an all-star berth. But during the Mets trip to Puerto Rico in late June, he pulled an oblique. Never went on a DL. He played through that injury. He did sit out a little bit. Up with it, Molina, and not in time. So Reyes gets him started. He is safe at first base. A tremendously quick from both sides of the plate.
You know, he had a lot of injuries early in his career, and that was a problem for him getting into the lineup. He became kind of an Iron Man for about 4 years there, and the Mets were really good. Last year he couldn't play. They weren't very good at all. He's back to looking like he's healthy again. That's the Jose Reyes. I mean, he's causing havoc all over the place. The only problem was the play on Garcia's ball. That didn't look like the guy we saw 2 or 3 years ago. He wasn't able to eat that one up, but he was able to beat that out.
So the bunt hit for Reyes. It looks like Garcia's having a little trouble with the mound here.
It got a lot of use in the top of the first.
It sure did. Garcia has posted 2 months of ERAs under 2. Back in April, he had a ridiculous ERA of 1.04, 1.53 in the month of May. As you mentioned, the Cardinals once again have an outstanding front of the rotation with Chris Carpenter and Adam Wainwright and Garcia, though Wainwright got knocked around last night.
These last 2 nights are both hard to believe. Wainwright gave up a 3-run homer to Jeff Francoeur. He gave up 6 earned runs, and now Johan Santana, the exact same result already tonight.
Reyes back in. Back to Reyes defensively. He's 27 years old now. He was just a kid when he broke in back in 2003. Tremendous range. Obviously, the foot speed, the ability to make the spectacular play.
Sure.
That one sucked into right field, slicing. Jay will go back and make the catch. Made a fine play. That one really took off. A rocket. And Castillo lines out. Good time for us to check out the Cardinals on the defensive side. Holiday's in left field. Kobe Rasmus in center field. And Jay just made a nice play there in right. On the left side of the infield, it's Lopez and Ryan. Schumacher and Pujols make up the right side. And Yadier Molina, the catching Molina brothers, they're all terrific, and Molina is the best.
No problems at first, no problems behind the plate, but they have had a lot of defensive problems on their infield other than those 2 already this season.
Brings up Angel Pagan, 304, 8 homers, 44 runs batted in. To make the final point on Reyes defensively, didn't you think when he first came up by now he would have pocketed a couple of Gold Gloves?
There's no question in my mind. I mean, you saw the arm strength that was there. You mentioned the range, but the problem is he's never really been able to adjust to the pace of the game. I mean, he's just got one speed. You watch him, everything he does is fast. I mean, when he's got plenty of time to make a throw, you've seen him hurry throws in situations like that. But when he's got time to set his feet, a lot of times he doesn't, showing off that arm. And I think because of that, it's kept him from ever receiving that award, and probably will.
Pagan breaks his bat, loops that line drive foul. He'll need a new stick here. And a guy like Jimmy Rollins seems to be able to slow it down all the time, doesn't he?
Yeah, he sure does. You know, you might think that Delgado had something to do with Reyes in some of the years. And I mean, it's not Derek Lee over there, but you know what? Ryan Howard has improved a lot to help Jimmy Rollins in that. But Jimmy knows how to make the routine play, and I just think from time to time Reyes is just going a little bit too fast.
Yeah, and that pattern may have hurt him as he went for a dive on a ball up the middle on top of the first inning. Perhaps didn't need to. Pagan, the hitter, some are calling the Mets' most valuable player. He has been their most consistent guy.
He's been the guy. I mean, he's hit leadoff, he's hit second, he's hit third. He's had the average over 300 all year long since he started playing full time.
Of course, they just got Beltran back after his knee situation has finally come to an end. But they just lost Jason Bay, at least for this series, to concussive symptoms. 4 days ago in L.A., he ran into the wall. And when he went on the flight to return back to New York, that's when that concussive situation really flared up. He started feeling terrible and will not play in this series. Line foul. Of course, Bay has not hit the way he hoped. He's only hit 6 home runs. But here's the injury on Friday as he went hard for this ball and right into that fence.
Does that not remind you a lot of Aaron Rowan with what happened in center field in Philadelphia? Of course, Aaron, he had all kinds of problems, had to have surgery and everything. Jason was able to continue to play. That's the amazing part, was that it wasn't really, you know, diagnosed until they got back from that road trip. That was Friday when it happened.
Reyes has not attempted to steal here yet. The breaking ball outside and the runner holding it first. On deck, David Wright, who's trying to get started again. He's hit the skids offensively.
Well, I know the score is 6-0. That's part of the reason that Jose Reyes is not going anywhere. But I'll tell you the number one reason is the guy behind home plate.
Sure.
That's the best defensive catcher in baseball. That's the best arm in baseball the last several years.
41% caught stealing. Reyes holding again, and it's downstairs for a ball to count 3-2.
Look at this at bat by Pagan. It shows you just how much maturity has happened for him. He was a guy last year. Alex Cora was telling me before the game. He came up last year. He made some mistakes. He did some base running things. You know, he would swing at pitches that he knew he shouldn't have. He has really put it together. And as you said, he's overall, I mean, he's been their best player.
You saw over the last 19 games what he has done. If he gets on, he can steal you a base as well. So they have some speed up at the top of the order. Leads the Mets with 23 stolen bases. Mets coming into play in third place in the NL East. They're 6.5 behind Atlanta. Now they got 8 runs last night in the series opener after scoring just 23 total runs on a 2-9 road trip. Before getting back into New York, that's ball 4. So the Mets have runners at first and second. Time for us to get it back for Baseball Tonight in-game update. Anish Shroff. Anish.
All right, this RB studio update takes us to Washington. Braves Nats. Levon Hernandez freezes Eric Kinski. Braves getting frisky on the base paths. Brian McCann hung up. Watch Jason Hayward. That counts as a steal of home. Braves up 2-0 in the second. We now go back to City with Dave O'Brien and Rick Sutcliffe. Guys.
Anish, thank you very much. Very heads up by Hayward. We've come to really admire the young guy. With his all-around game, he's going to be an all-star for a long time.
It was a situation where you needed to speed the game up a little bit. He's got the ability to do that.
Well, here's David Wright hitting .297, 15 homers, 69 RBIs. There are 2 on for him, and Garcia is having some command issues here early.
That's something that he, throughout his career, has always been able to do, is throw strikes. And I'll tell you another thing, he does not give up the long ball. This is his 20th start of the year. He's only allowed 5 home runs.
Hot, humid night here in New York. Nubbed off the end of the bat. Right to Pujols. He'll take the certain out. Got it there. Runners moving up to second and third, and there are 2 gone. So Reyes into third and Pagan into second. Since the All-Star break, the Mets have really been dismal offensively, despite the 8 runs last night. That was really an explosion. Look at all the last places here in the National League since the break.
Well, they're 4-12 since July the 7th. That ties the Royals for the worst record in the majors. And the biggest problem that they've had all year long, they can't win on the road, and they can't win on the road because they don't hit. .239, their team average, went away from Citi Field.
And yet what Santana did tonight was completely unexpected. If they struggle to score runs tonight, that is anticipated. But Johan Santana having the awful time of it he's had so far. Here's Beltran, another guy who pretty much mirrors their offensive issues. Mets were 1-9 in his first 10 games back to the lineup. Returning from the knee. He's been a polarizing figure for the Mets and for Met fans everywhere. Ever since he took that called third strike in Game 7 of the 06 NLCS from Adam Wainwright to give St. Louis the series.
That curveball that Wainwright threw is going to polarize a lot of people, but it is the one that they remember because that was to the World Series.
Now the count moves to 2-1. A base hit will mean 2 runs here. And that could be huge for the Mets tonight. If they can grab a couple against Garcia after falling behind by half a dozen in the first. Cardinals got 4 2-out hits in their half of the inning, and that's ball 3.
Well, Garcia's just in his first year at the big league level, but he already knows to look into the on-deck circle. I know you got a 6-run lead. You don't want to really pitch around anybody, but you got a guy that was just recalled yesterday as opposed to a guy who has proven to be an offensive weapon.
Now the man on deck is Mike Hessman, as Sut mentioned, just called up from the minor leagues. Pretty much a career minor leaguer, fouled away by Beltran, although has hit a ton of home runs in the minor leagues. 329 of them. He actually has 13 at the major league level too, but pretty much just a few cups of coffee here and there with Atlanta and Detroit.
I was talking with Ike Davis, who Hessman's replacing tonight at first base, and he said he can hit it as far as anybody in the ball game tonight. So loading the bases would be something the Mets would like to do.
Garcia trying to free himself from the first inning and left it low for ball 4, so the bases are loaded for Mike Hessman. 6'5", 215 pounds, and here he comes. He is the modern-day Crash Davis. Just called up when Rob Barajas went on a DL.
You talked about all of those homers, and people might wonder what's been keeping him down at the minor league level. Well, he's almost got 2,000 strikeouts at the level. He's one of those guys that, I mean, if he runs into it, he can hit it a long ways, but more times than not, he scuffles putting the ball in play.
A Dave Kingman type.
Exactly.
Bases all filled up, 2 down, and a breaking ball in there for a strike. As mentioned, 329 minor league home runs, the most ever at the minor league level, by the way, hit by Hector Espino. In the Mexican League, for the most part, hit nearly 500, 484. It was back in the 60s and 70s. He was known as the Babe Ruth of Mexico. Hits it sharply but foul off the third base line.
Boy, that would have been big. Really the first sign of any kind of noise here at Citi Field by the Mets fan. An off-speed pitch here, the big breaking ball. It's hanging up into his eyes. Just barely fouled down the line. Third base umpire Marvin Hudson getting the call right. That's one I think Hessman would like to have back. That ball was nowhere near where Garcia wanted it to be.
Reyes at third, Pagan at second, Beltran at first base. Mets trying to rally, down 6. There's a drive, sucked deep to left, headed for the wall. It is off the wall. Reyes is in, Pagan is in, Beltran to third, throw to second, not in time. Say hello to New York City, Mike Hessman. And the Mets get 2 big runs. That was on an 0-2 pitch.
Another hanging breaking ball. Obviously, the scouting report that the Cardinals have are that he struggles with the curveball. Well, when you show him 3 in a row that are in exactly the same location, he's going to make an adjustment. And boy, did he hit this ball hard. Actually so hard that Beltran at first base was not able to score on a ball that was off the ball. It comes back right to Holiday. He hits the cutoff man. But look at that. The Mets cutting into this lead.
I'll tell you what. Couple feet higher.
Oh,
you've got yourself some story there, and Santana's trying to get back in the game. Hessman has gotten him close to getting back in it.
You know what's amazing is that Garcia and Santana hooked up earlier this year at St. Louis in a ball game on April the 17th. Both of them threw 7 scoreless innings. Santana gave up 4 hits. Garcia only gave up 1. It took 20 innings to end that ball game. The Mets eventually won that game 2-1. And look at this. We're 6-2 already in the first inning here, and it's not over.
Game took 6 hours and 53 minutes. Tonight, a little different tone. Well, here's Francoeur. The Mets may not be done yet in the inning. Jeff Francoeur, the former Atlanta Brave, at 248, 9 homers, 45 RBIs. He whacked a 3-run homer here last night.
It was huge. It was really the deciding blow. Talking with both Tony La Russa and Jerry Manuel, both of them agreed that was the big blow of the game.
But Garcia missing again. Well, last night, here's Francoeur with a 3-run bomb.
Look at where Molina was sitting. That ball was supposed to be a foot off the outside corner. One of the few times all year Adam Wainwright has missed his spot.
Base hit means 2 more. He's working off the corner, 3-0. Garcia, by the way, has walked 2 men in the first inning with a 6-0 lead. Now 6-2.
There are so many things happening here tonight that I don't think anybody expected.
And that doesn't happen very often. Francoeur taking ball 4. And here comes the 8th Met to bat in the first inning.
Well, that was a decision right there made by Tony La Russa. You could see that Molina was sitting almost in the left-handed batter spot. They did not want anything to do with Francoeur. They wanted to go after Blanco here. think back, though, to when Jerry Manuel ordered the intentional pass to Brendan Ryan, bringing the pitcher up. He had the spot that he wanted. Well, Garcia ends up getting the base hit, driving in two. Later on in the top of the first, he too scored a run.
How bizarre is this so far? Santana with a 2.79 ERA. Garcia with a 2.21 ERA. We thought we might not see a pitching coach all night from either side, and now both pitching coaches have visited the hill in the first inning.
We were thinking about dinner reservations at 9:30. That's not going to happen. You know what? There's two ball clubs here tonight that both feel like they have a chance to get to the postseason, and they're playing like it.
Well, a chance that both starting pitchers could hit in the first inning. It's up to Henry Blanco. 274, 2 homers, 7 runs batted in. The Met catcher tonight with the bases loaded. And takes one inside.
Boy, this is so out of character for Garcia. This guy got to the big leagues because he threw strikes at every level he ever was, including his rookie year in the big leagues.
1-0 pitch, high pop up. The shortstop Ryan underneath it and left, and that will end it. Well, we came on the air talking about what a great pitcher's duel this was going to be, and you know, we always nail it. Already 10 hits and 8 runs, 6-2 St. Louis.
Alex at 270.
Bonus coverage here on ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball. Alex Rodriguez going for career home run number 600. Yankees, Indians. Let's listen into the Yes Network. Kent Singleton and John Flaherty on the call.
Home runs as he steps in. First pitch is outside for ball 1.
You see the fans all want home run number 600 lined up above the left field wall. But you wonder, Kenny, with 2 outs here and a runner in scoring position, maybe that gives Alex a little bit more focus. Just drive the run in, and if you get the ball in the air, so be it. I think if nobody's on, he probably tries to get a little big.
Pitch is low, ball 2. Like Teixeira before him, A-Rod's looking for his first hit of the series. He's 0 for 8. And he's already tied Willie Mays for the most at-bats between home run number 599 and number 600. So he's going to set a new record whenever he hits it.
Well, he's in a good hitter's count here, 2-0. You're probably going to get a fastball. The problem is it's going to have some movement on it.
Pitch is grounded foul in front of third base coach Robbie Thompson. Well, you all know the home run record is held by Barry Bonds at 762. Alex is 164 home runs away as he tries to become the youngest member to join the 600 home run club.
2 for 8 in his career against Carmona. One of those hits a home run.
Sounds like a high sinker. See if he gets one here. Pitch is on the way, and it's downstairs. Ball 3. 3 balls and a strike. They're ready out in left field. The wind should not be a factor at this point in the ballgame. There isn't much of a breeze. So the ball should travel just about anywhere in this ballpark. 3-1 pitch, and it swung on a drill through the middle for a base hit. Teixeira is rounding third. He's being waved home, and he will score standing up. And the Yankees take a 1-0 lead on a 2-out single by Alex Rodriguez.
Well, nice adjustment by Alex in that at bat. 2-0. He got
So a hit for A-Rod, but no home run, so he's still stuck on 599. Yankees, Indians, they've resumed after a 42-minute rain delay. Again, we will bring you all of A-Rod's at-bats as he goes for that milestone home run. For now, we go back to our game, Citi Field with Dave and Rick.
Anish, thank you very much. Haven't missed a thing. Matt Holliday leading off the second inning has worked the count to 3-1 on Johan Santana. Of course, Holliday belted the 2-run homer in the first inning, and he knocks a foul to make it 3-2. Santana allowing 6 runs and 8 hits in the first inning. Those are both career first inning highs for the left-hander.
It was that amazing changeup of his that started all of the offense for St. Louis. It was an off-speed pitch that Holiday hit for the 2-run homer.
Holiday has been surging since the All-Star break. It's a high fly to center, but not deep. And Beltran underneath to put it away.
Finally able to locate a fastball there, and he gets the result that he wanted. Let's go back to that first inning where all of the problems started. Here we go. First pitch of the ball game, right down the middle. And look at the velocity. Only a couple of times was he able to touch 90 miles an hour. 88, 89, centered in the heart of the plate. Very few change-up. There's a slider that he finally went to at the end, and that too was hit hard.
K-Zone brought to you by Denny's. Here's Molina, who singled and scored in the first inning, making him 7 for 15 against Santana. And Colby Rasmus to follow. Big explosion in the opening frame for the Cardinals. But then the Mets fought back to get 2 and left the bases loaded, where they could have done some more damage against Garcia, who had his own issues. Cardinal starters, he walked 3 men in the first. Right to the second baseman Castillo. Plenty of time. 2 up and 2 down. And boy, does Santana need a fast inning. And he's off to a good start.
Well, it shows you even more about Johan here. I mean, he was able to turn the page on that bad first inning. There's a lot of guys that aren't able to do that. They I don't want to say they quit, but they don't have the same mentality they did when the game started. This is really, really important for a bullpen. You can't make that phone call down there in the second or third inning and expect to win this series or compete the rest of the year.
Colby Rasmus here. A double in the opening inning. 16 home runs for Colby. And one of those a 3-run homer against the Mets back in the middle of May. 1 pitch left high.
You know, one thing I learned a long time ago, I mean, even though you look at that scoreboard and there's that big 6 spot that you gave up, that's not how you look at it. You look at all of those innings you have yet to play, and you're down 4-0. That's it.
Foul tip to the catcher's mitt. 1-2 on Rasmus.
Johan's going to have a chance to lead off in the bottom of the second. You can help yourself, as Garcia was able to do. You have to have that mentality that you can get back into this game.
Well, Jaime Garcia, the starter for the Cardinals, already with a 2-run single. Probably had the best single at bat of any of the Cardinals in that first inning uprising. A 9-pitch at bat, ending in 2 RBIs. Here comes the 2-2 to Rasmus, and he works it full.
Johan knows the home plate umpire Darryl Cousins real well. I knew Darryl for a long time, and that it's one of the smaller plates in all of baseball. It always has been, and it's going to be again tonight.
Rasmus hit 9 homers in the month of June. He pops this one up, though, and David Wright is there on the dirt. He's got it. So after a 38-pitch first inning, Santana retires the side in the second on 15 pitches. 6-2 Cardinals, bottom of the second inning. And Rick, this time of the year, the GMs, as we go to winning baseball, really earn their keep.
They really do. It's that time of the year where they need to add that one piece to get their club over the hump. Ruben Amaro Jr. was able to do that with Cliff Lee. They went on to the World Series last year. Ned Coletti did it with Manny Ramirez back in 08. They got to the finals of the League Championship Series. Mike Scioscia's team improved, obviously, when they added Mark Teixeira back in 08. I don't know if anybody made a bigger acquisition than that of CC Sabathia. When he went to Milwaukee, they won the wild card. And think back to 05 when the Houston Astros picked up Carlos Beltran. They became the National League champions, largely in part of the general manager being able to do what they're supposed to do.
Remember the great run Beltran had. Well, here's Santana leading off the back end of the second inning. Then it'll be Reyes and Castillo for the Mets. They had better really believe the marketing slogan, "Do you believe in comebacks?" The one that they have plastered all over Queens this season. They're down in this one, and they're trailing Atlanta by 6.5. And Atlanta leads Washington 2-0 in the fourth inning.
You know, OB, just kind of thinking about this time of year where the fans have done everything they can. I mean, they're showing up in record numbers. The players are leaving it all on the field. Everybody's banged up. Managers, coaches have all done their job. It's time for the general managers.
Santana goes down and up and throwing Molina to complete the strikeout. He gets him there. Well, the Mets at one point in late June were 11 games over 500. And they were sitting pretty at that point, but it's been downhill ever since for the New York Mets to fall 6.5 games back. What do you think they need to do if they have to do anything?
You know what? You hear talk of needing maybe a starting pitcher. You could use somebody. I hear Kyle Farnsworth named from the Kansas City Royals, possibly somebody to help in that 7th and 8th inning. You kind of need that spark as a player. I mean, you know, just give me a name. Give me somebody that can come in here and just kind of lighten the load a little bit. You know, you get a little momentum. You get another personality in there. Sometimes, OB, it really clicks.
Reyes extended his hitting streak to 9 consecutive games with a bunt single in the first inning and came around to score. And chops that one, but foul off third base.
You know, a couple of those general managers have already gotten their job done this year. You know, Cliff Lee has been moved again. Of course, he's a Texas Ranger. You think about the Angels making another acquisition. They were able to pick up Danny Herron. You know, you can see right there, you knew that the cell phone wasn't far away from Omar Venaya.
Toss on to first base and another K. Back-to-back strikeouts in front of Luis Castillo. Some other trade options. And by the way, Buster Olney, Baseball Tonight, will join us a little bit later come the 5th inning. But the big one, of course, for the Cardinals is the possibility of acquiring Roy Oswalt.
Well, he told us earlier this season that was one place he wouldn't mind going if the Astros wanted to move him. He also said he'd go to New York. He'd go to the Mets or the Yankees if there was an opportunity to win there.
Castillo 0 for 1. He's lined out sharply to right field. Mets on their recent road trip out west, the one they went 2-9 on, were shut out 4 times. Up and down season, it's been dogged by a weak offense.
Now, speaking of dogging it, I heard that Jose Guillen was going to the Yankees. That deal was done until they saw him loaf on a ball that he hit just a couple of games ago. Yeah, well, they wanted no part of that.
Fouled away by Castillo. Pagan would hit next to give it a chance. 6-2 St. Louis. They got them all in the top of the first of Johan Santana.
I tell you what, in between innings, Dave Duncan pretty much aired out his 24-year-old starting pitcher. He's been a different guy out here, has he not?
Well, he has whiffed the first 2 he's faced. And he's going to get out of this inning very quickly. So both pitchers to a perfect second after a very rocky first inning. So now it becomes the pitcher's duel we expected. 6-2 St. Louis.
ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball, presented by Captain Morgan, is brought to you by Pizza Hut. Get your favorite pizza with the toppings you love for one incredible price. And One A Day Men's, the official multivitamin of MLB, specially formulated for men.
Top of the third inning, Johan Santana back at it, trying to hold here after giving up 6 quick runs in the first inning. And he gets the bottom third, including the pitcher who hits out of the 8th spot for St. Louis. Back here in Queens and Citi Field. Great to have you with us on a Wednesday night. This one popped up in foul ground. Here comes Blanco and Hessman. He'll make the catch. Nice running play right through the Mets Hall of Fame logo. Now ESPN Sunday Night Baseball coming up at 8 Eastern. The Dodgers taking on their longtime rival, the Giants. Last time they played, it got pretty chippy. And then NL East rivals take to the field on Monday Night Baseball. That's Atlanta taking on these Mets.
Now, there were a lot of suspensions the last time the Giants and Dodgers hooked up. Kershaw drilled Aaron Rowan. Matt Kemp was drilled. Stay tuned. More to come.
Darryl Strawberry in the house. 252 career home runs for the Mets. #1 on the franchise home run board. And this weekend, he is going into the Mets Hall of Fame with this class of 2010.
Well, I'll tell you what, with all of the off-field problems that he had, he would have been going in with Andre Dawson because of the talent that young man had.
Well, that's no lie. The first time you saw him swing a bat, didn't you think he'll hit 600 home runs?
It was Ken Griffey Jr. That same kind of swing, that same kind of power.
Here's the pitcher, Garcia. Put his bat on the ball, ending a long 9-pitch at bat in the first inning, and drove in 2 runs with a base hit past a diving Jose Reyes.
You know, and on a play we both agree that it didn't look like he really needed to dive. If he got the good jump and he took the good angle, plenty of time to throw out the pitcher.
Inside for a ball. Skip Schumacher, the 9-hitter, is on deck.
You know, you just kind of watch Brendan Ryan playing shortstop with a guy with no speed out there. He's playing way deep to begin with. Look at how shallow Reyes was with the opposing pitcher up.
Right back to the mound. Reyes cradles that and gets him. 2 up, 2 down as we go back for a Baseball Tonight in-game update. And Anish.
All right, this update brought to you by StarCraft 2. Much anticipated debut in Philly for Dominic Brown. Baseball America recently named him the #1 prospect in the game. Brown an RBI double in his first big league at bat. He's filling in for the injured Shane Victorino. Welcome to the show. Phil's up 2-0. We go back to Citi Field. Dave and Rick.
Baseball America knows what they're writing about.
Well, we got a good look at him in the futures game when he hit cleanup for Team USA and singled in his very first at bat there.
Skip Schumacher here, an RBI single in the opening inning. A first inning that saw Albert Pujols make 2 of the 3 Cardinal outs, amazingly enough. And yet they still got 6 runs on 8 hits. But Santana has settled down since then. He's trying to work his second consecutive 1-2-3 inning.
I'll be just kind of watching Dominic Brown during the futures game. He'll remind you a little bit of Strawberry. He doesn't have that kind of power yet, but that same kind of tall, slender build. He can run. Above average outfielder. He could be an impact offensive player for the Phillies.
Waved at and missed, strike 3. So Santana's starting to get on a roll after the bad start, but he has set down 7 straight. Still 6-2 St. Louis in the middle of the 3rd. We welcome you back to Wednesday Night Baseball, presented by Captain Morgan. Turned into a very comfortable night here in New York. It's the Mets and the Cardinals, game 2 of the series. New York winning last night. Tonight, the Cardinals came out gunning for Johan Santana, but now both pitchers look like they're settling in. Here's Pagan showing bunt, and he takes the ball. He walked and scored in the first inning. He came in on a Mike Hessman 2-run double just underneath that orange line in left field, almost a grand slam for the man just called up from the minor leagues, the longtime minor leaguer, 15 years. And pitch outside for a ball. Pagan a hot bat right now, and against the Cardinals he's always hot. Is a .415 career average against St. Louis, 17 out of 41.
Guy that can swing the bat from both sides of the plate.
Nub just inside the bag, off the glove of Pujols. It rattles into foul territory. He's going to take the turn. He's heading for second, and he'll get there standing up. Well, you see the wheels of Pagan. He turns that, and he barely made contact, into a double.
23 stolen bases already this year. Really his first opportunity to play every day. He's played all over in the outfield, and now he's hitting right in the heart of the order because of things like this. He's got the ability to make things happen. This ball just off the end of Albert Pujols' glove. An outstanding effort on his part, but look at the effort there of Pagan. Not being comfortable with just another base hit. He turns the corner in scoring position with nobody out.
So Angel Pagan with a double in front of David Wright, who is 0 for 1 with a grounder to first base. Pujols just missing making a spectacular play, although not a hard hit ball, and that's in there for strike 1.
Very important at bat in this ball game. And David Wright's the guy you want up there at home plate. You have to, at least, worst case scenario, it's got to be a productive out. You've got to pick up that run and get closer to that lead.
Wright has driven in 69 runs. Chopped to third. Up with it Lopez. That will not advance the runner, and the out at first base. So 1 man gone as we go back to the studio for an update. Here's Anish.
All right, thanks, guys. With a single in the 3rd inning, Giants rookie catcher Buster Posey extends his hit streak to 21 games. It's the longest hit streak by a Giants rookie since Willie McCovey had a 22-game hit streak in 1959. Old stretch. Back to you guys at Citi Field.
And back here at Citi Field, it's 1st and 2nd. 1 man out for Carlos Beltran. He took a walk in the 1st inning. Jaime Garcia from Reynosa, Mexico, on the mound tonight. 6'2", 215, and he delivers a strike.
Pagan out there at second base now with the unproductive out from David Wright.
he's thinking about trying to steal third, getting the biggest possible lead that he can do.
Beltran back in the fold. He came off the 60-day disabled list on the 15th of July. And he'll take one inside. He underwent arthroscopic surgery to clean out the arthritic area of his right knee back in January. It took a long time to get back.
You know what? He came back right after the All-Star game, but he made an appearance with the Mets on the Sunday before the All-Star game. There are a lot of people in that Met clubhouse that question that. No one knew who made that decision, whether it was him or whether it was the front office. But what's he doing sitting around for 4 days before they go on a West Coast trip, not getting live at bats at the minor league level? Nobody knew if it was Jerry Manuel. They didn't know if it was Omar Minaya. But all of a sudden he goes on the West Coast and he can't do anything.
Lines that one into left field, backing up Holiday, but plenty of room to make the catch for the out. There are 2 men gone. So I mean, if you're the general manager, you're telling him, hey, get in there, get some live at bats, especially given the caliber of the Giants staff you're about to face.
If they're coming back on the West Coast, I have him play somewhere in the Midwest the day before that ball game. You know, when you go to San Francisco, as they did to open the second half, you got Lincecum, you got Kane, you got Zito waiting on you. And it doesn't get any better. The Dodgers have always had pitching, and now the Padres have pitching. Hence the reason he's off to such an awful start.
Well, here's Mike Hessman, his second major league at bat this season, a 2-run double in the first inning. He missed a home run by just a couple of feet.
Another hanging breaking ball on an 0-2 count. I would imagine that that was a lot of the conversation with Garcia and Dave Duncan. You're better than that. You've got to be better than that. This game has a long ways to go before the decision is decided.
That would have been a grand slam had it gotten over that wall. That'll miss down low to count 1 ball and 1 strike, 2 out, a man at second.
Just thinking about David Wright continuing to struggle. He's now 3 for his last 29. But if he was going to hit a ground ball in that situation, it had to be to the right side of the infield. After that, Beltran's fly ball would have gotten another run and gotten the Mets that much closer. That was not a David Wright at bat.
No, he's had 2 unproductive outs tonight. Shattered back, ground ball to short. Ryan with plenty of time. High throw, but got him. Side is retired, so they waste Pagan's double and strand him. Albert Pujols is about to hit for the 3rd time tonight. It is 6-2 St. Louis. Hey, the X Games begins on ESPN tomorrow. First at 2 Eastern, catch coverage of BMX Park and Skateboard Street Elimination. Then at 8 Eastern, see finals coverage of Moto X Freestyle, Super X, Women's Super X, and Skateboard Big Air. X Games 16 on ESPN tomorrow. Back at Citi Field here in Queens, it is 6-2 St. Louis. Although Santana pitching well now over the last 3 innings. And Reyes fires a strike to get Lopez, who had singled his first 2 times up. 1 fast out on 1 pitch.
You know, I just wonder, you mentioned that Johan took a little bit longer than normal to get to the mound. The team had been out there for almost a minute, and he just was a little out of sorts on the very first pitch he delivered. He had a man on base. You can just see his intensity has picked up since that first inning. Even though he's still down 4 runs, he's out there pitching like he's got a lead.
Brings up John Jay, the rookie, has singled and also flied to left, 1 for 2. Now, it'll be interesting to find this out later. They had a gentleman out there throwing the ceremonial first pitch. Was that delaying Santana getting out to the mound? Were they just running behind with pregame? Or was Santana deliberately slow to get out there for some reason? But it did take him forever. Of course, they had a guy on the mound.
He applauds the gentleman as he walks off, but this is supposed to be something that's coordinated, you know, that's timed so that he knows when he leaves the bullpen how much time he has in the dugout and how long it takes to get out to the mound. He just, to me, it seemed like it was about 15 minutes between when he left the bullpen as to when he took the mound to throw the first pitch.
First pitch was 2 minutes late. That one into right field for a base hit, drops down, and Jay is on his 2nd hit tonight. Did you see the guy try and steal an autograph from Santana just before he walked away? He was slowing him down even more.
Johan's one of the easiest going guys on earth, but I don't think he would be that way as you know, you're getting ready to go up against Albert Pujols and the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, he wasn't very happy.
Looked like he was handing him a business card or something.
And after that, he allowed 6 runs on 8 hits in the first inning. Worst first inning of his outstanding career, which has included 2 Cy Youngs. Well, here's Pujols. And a very quiet night so far for Albert, who has 1 for his last 21. He's popped up to second, and he's also lined out deep to center field. And we timed it for Santana. For what it's worth, it took 3.5 minutes between the time he went from the dugout until the moment he threw his first pitch. It's a long time.
I would not have handled that as well as he did. You know, that's not supposed to happen. Now, if that's a gentleman that's out there with the cane and the retired service hat, yeah, I'll probably give him my glove or my hat. But, you know, not the other guy.
The 1-1 is up top on Pujols, who has had 23 home runs, 70 runs batted in. Fresh off his David Letterman appearance on Monday night. Seemed to charm Dave and the audience there at the Ed Sullivan Theater. His numbers certainly down from the kind of pace he set, for example, last year, when he hit 47 homers, drove in 135 runs. But here it is Monday night. Dennis Leary serving as the pitcher out on the street.
Yeah,
well, you don't want to go there.
He's very picky.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea.
You like that? So you and Albert get along very well. You never would have drilled him. That one flicked foul off to the right into the crowd. Right.
You know, I had a rule that I never hit anybody that I knew that I could get out. I probably would have thrown it out a few times. I mean, you know, you look at a guy and you say, well, you know, he's got a weakness here. You know, you can come in on him and then go. This isn't one of those guys. When his timing is right, it's not right now. We saw him in the first at bat miss a pitch up and out over the plate. He's just opening up a little bit too soon. Probably a little bit banged up. I saw him favoring his back a little bit during batting practice earlier today, but he's going to play through it.
2 home runs against Santana in his career. That's in 17 at bats.
There's just so much more that he does for this Cardinal team when he's in the lineup rather than just hit. And he almost always hits, but you know, he's one of those guys that's vocal during the game. He might say something on the bench. He might make a diving play out there on defense.
But it's like Bizarro World when you talk about a guy having an off year and he's driven in 70 and it's not even August yet. Runner goes, popped up, right, drifting into foul ground, very, very high onto the warning track area, makes a leaping catch. Right next to that rolled up tarp. Runner has to hold at first base. And there are 2 down. Albert is now 0 for 3 tonight. But look at some of his magnificent career accomplishments. 2001 National League Rookie of the Year, 3-time MVP, including last year. He's bearing down on 400 homers. Won the batting title in 03, the home run title in 09. Well, when he hit 47.
We were there opening day in Cincinnati when he homered in his very first at bat. You know, he's defending back-to-back MVPs in the National League. 2 homers that day, 4 for 5, off to another great start.
Well, here's Holiday, a 2-run homer, and he's also flied out to center. The fastball will be inside for ball 1. 2 down, a man on. Now, on the topic of home runs, of course, Alex Rodriguez is 1 away from 600. The Yankees are playing in Cleveland tonight, and he is moments away from coming up, so you will not miss any of his at-bats tonight. He's still there at 599. High pop up along the right field line. Frank Cora is there and will make the grab. Side retired. Santana gives up 1 hit, but nothing comes of that. It's still 6-2 St. Louis. They got them all in the first inning.
Score easily with Cervelli.
Alex Rodriguez with another crack at 600, his second at bat against the Indians. He had an RBI single his first time up. 2 on, 2 outs, top 2. Let's listen into the Yes Network. Ken Singleton and John Flaherty.
Against Carmona as the fans head back to that home run porch out in left field. 2 on, 2 out, 4-0 Yankees. Pitch is popped up to the right side. Drifting back is Donald, the second baseman, in the short right field, and makes the catch for the final out here in the second inning. But the Yankees score 3 runs here in the second, and at the end of.
So now A-Rod has gone 23 at-bats without hitting a home run since hitting number 599. When he gets to 600, he'd become the 7th player to reach that milestone. He'd also be the youngest to get to 600. He turned just 35 yesterday. We now bring you out to our Wednesday night game. Mets-Cardinals in Queens. Dave O'Brien and Rick Sutcliffe on the call.
And a hot night here in New York. The left-hander Jaime Garcia, just 24 years old, has a 6-2 lead for St. Louis, although in the first inning he survived 3 walks, giving up a couple of runs. After that, he's pitched effectively. Seen a good fastball, good curveball tonight.
Yeah, well, he got his ear chewed on pretty good after that first inning. Look at Dave Duncan kind of stalking him. Watch him shake his head there. He'll say a couple of things, and then he'll point out to the scoreboard. Forget about those 6 runs. That's over with. You can't do anything about it. Then he starts talking about that focus. You've got to continue doing what you've done to be successful, or you're not going to be around very long. The next thing you know, Garcia is a completely different guy, and he's out there pitching with that confidence that has already won him 9 games this year.
Up to 55 pitches. Of course, most of that in the first inning. He's allowed only 1 hit in the last 2 innings. Hard ground ball behind the bag, and up with it Lopez to throw out Frank Gore, who very seldom waits around to swing the bat. 1 man out in front of Henry Blanco.
That's when everything is coordinated together. That's when the catcher knows what sign to put down. The pitcher knows what you're looking for. Take a little bit off a sinking fastball. We've got the infield defense set up that way. Third baseman's guarding the line. Usually with a lot of people, that's a double. That hit right into the strategy of Tony La Russa.
Henry Blanco 0 for 1 with a pop to short. Why would you have loved to have pitched to Yadier Molina? What is it about his target, or the way he calls the game, the way he blocks all the things that are required of a catcher? Why is he special?
His toughness. His toughness is the first thing I think of. And I go back to 04 when you and I were doing the World Series, and Big Papi with the Red Sox was in the on-deck circle, and Manny was hitting. And all of a sudden, Molina, in the very first at-bat, heard something. He didn't know if maybe somebody was whistling, somebody giving location. And remember, he almost got in a fight with those 2. I mean, he didn't care about anything. You know, I'm a rookie. You're the heroes. You know what? You're not going to get away with it if that's what's going on. He's been like that from the very beginning.
Ryan scoops and gets the out. Blanco retired. 6-3, 2 men gone, and Santana, the pitcher, marching up to swing. Well, here at Citi Field tonight, 85 degrees when we started. They have been locked up in a heat wave all summer in New York. They're hoping the Mets get just as hot, but what a start for the Cardinals tonight. Dave O'Brien, Rick Sutcliffe with you. St. Louis jumping on Johan Santana for 6 runs and 8 hits in the first inning. And the Mets came back and got 2 in their half of the first inning, and we have not had a run on the board since then.
Well, we've got that pitcher's duo that we so heavily predicted in our pregame.
Just took a little extra time. Santana struck out his first time up.
We had a conversation with Chris Carpenter earlier this year, and I said, what about Molina? You tell me. And he goes, you know, even with the Gold Gloves, the All-Stars, and all of that, he's underrated. And I said, well, how can that be? He says, you have no idea how important he is to this ball club. Only Jason Kendall of the Royals has caught more innings this year than the Cardinals catcher.
Well, Tony La Russa bats him 5th tonight. Even though his numbers aren't great this year, he's had a down year offensively, hitting just .234.
Yeah, but like you said, they were decent against Johan. I mean, this was one guy that he's had some success with. He's got confidence with. And you know what? When you got a catcher that's back there every day and he leaves his heart and soul on the field, you know, you reward him with an RBI situation. And, you know, Molina was right there for him.
He's now 7 for 16 off the man at the plate right here, who takes low for a ball, and 3-2 the count. Well, Garcia walked 3 in the first inning. 1 of those came in to score.
You better throw a strike here, or Dave Duncan's going to be waiting on you again.
Fouled away. On deck, the speedy Jose Reyes. Talk about the 3 men at the top of the rotation for the St. Louis Cardinals. Statistically, they are the best in the game.
Well, statistically, they could be #1s for a lot of different teams.
Swing and a miss. Garcia blows away Santana. Since the first inning, each pitcher has given up just 1 hit and no runs in the next 3. 6-2 St. Louis at the end of 4. Major League Baseball is proud to support Stand Up to Cancer. Visit standuptocancer.org to learn how you can help us in the fight against cancer. Citi Field on a Wednesday night. Cardinals still on top 6-2. That score has been frozen. By the way, the only thing that's been frozen in New York for the last 2 months since the first inning. Record highs in June, and it's heading that way through the end of July as well. Yadier Molina will lead it off. He is 1 for 2 tonight. We are on to the 5th inning. Looked like they had figured out Santana in the first inning, or Santana was out of sorts because of that pregame ceremony that apparently ran a little bit long and caused a delay. But since that first inning, Sud, he has been very, very effective. Well, he's been Johan Santana.
Well, in my opinion, he has not had his best fastball tonight. And he found that out early, but it took him too long to make that adjustment. He has settled down by throwing changeup and throwing a lot of cut fastball, going with some late movement rather than trying to locate something without velocity.
Molina likes to swing the bat against him. That's up high for a ball. 7 out of 16 lifetime. Yadier just voted to his 2nd consecutive All-Star team. Since 05, no catcher in baseball has a higher caught stealing percentage. His is at 41%. And of course 35 pickoffs as well since 05. He's had 2 of those this season. You just can't nap at first base or he's going to embarrass you.
He and Albert Pujols, I mean, it's almost like they read each other's mind. There's not even a sign. A lot of people tried to pick up Pujols' sign at first. There's not one. They know each other so well.
In there, got him looking for strike 3. 1 man out in the 5th inning. Let's go to Anish back in the studio for a Sports Center right now.
The Sports Center right now presented by Sprint. Alex Rodriguez 1 for 2 with an RBI single, but still no home run. He's still looking for number 600. He's now got 23 at bats without a home run since hitting number 599. The Yankees have a 4-0 lead, bottom 2 in Cleveland. Let's go back to Queens.
Anish, thank you very much. The batter Colby Rasmus, a double and a pop-up, 1 for 2.
You know, I think I saw a graphic the other night on Baseball Tonight. That's the most at bats between 599 and 600. Obviously, there aren't that many to compare it with, but that's the most.
Fouled back to the net, 0-2. We'll get you to A-Rod every time he bats tonight, so you'll not miss that opportunity. There has been less fanfare over this approach to 600 home runs than any of the recent ones, I think, by far. Liner softly hit into left center field. That'll drop down, and Rasmus, who came into the ball game 1 for his last 25, has locked in again. He's 2 for 3.
We took a look in the first inning at the problems for Santana not being able to locate the fastball. Let's watch how he settled down here. Look at the changeup on the outside corner. Take a look at the cut fastball there. And this was a 3-2 cutter that he got Albert Pujols to pop up on. On the other hand, take a look at the bottom of the K zone. That is where Garcia has lived. That's what Dave Duncan told him that he needed to do. He has got to stay down at the knees or below. He has done that the last 3 innings.
K-Zone brought to you by Denny's. First one swung on and missed by Brendan Ryan, who's 0 for 1. He's popped out to the first baseman. He's really having a hard go of it in July. 8 for 48 coming into tonight. So facing Santana probably won't help. He's 0 for 8 against him. Rasmus at first, 1 man gone. We have not seen a double play turned in this game tonight.
You know, I don't know Brendan that well, but standing at the cage opening day, watching him take batting practice, I mean, he was firing the bat against the cage when he would pop up. I mean, in BP before opening day, he was just so intense and so focused on succeeding offensively that I think it kind of has affected his whole game. He is an outstanding defensive shortstop that made a bunch of errors this year.
Had surgery on his right wrist in January, so that delayed him getting back to action. Hitting just 200 with 2 home runs.
He's a spark plug. A lot of energy.
Santana to the plate. Check swing pops out of the middle. Blanco. No advance by Rasmus.
You know, we've talked about Molina, and you can't say enough good things about him defensively. Blanco is outstanding as well. He's not Molina. He's not an everyday type guy, but one of the stronger throwing arms. He's a guy that pitchers just love to work with.
Cardinals at the moment are a half game out of first place. Cincinnati won earlier today. They pounded on Milwaukee 10-2. Fly ball lifted into left. On the move, Pagan says he has it, and into the alley for out number 2. So right now St. Louis is a half game behind pending the outcome of this one. However, after tomorrow's day game, the finale here in New York, the Cardinals go home, and their homestand is 6 games against the Pirates and Houston. We're both buried at the bottom of the division, so they have a chance to really move up on Cincinnati.
Look out. We talked about Pujols being like a cork held underwater. The St. Louis Cardinals might be just like that. But I tell you what I couldn't get over was how many of the guys were talking about the Cincinnati Reds not going away. They're for real. Dusty Baker has got that team playing outstanding. You know that Walt Jocketty's not afraid to go out and make a move. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does something offensively in the next few days. And they've got pitching at the minor league level that they can go get when needed. Volquez is back and healthy again.
Cincinnati is very tough on that division. Of course, they won again today. Popped up here by Garcia. And Castillo puts away the pitcher. So Santana pitches around the 1 hit he allows. And 1 man left. We have played half the ball game on a Wednesday night. It is 6-2 Cardinals. Bottom 5, and that means the Mets are coming up down by 4 to the St. Louis Cardinals. Rick Sutcliffe, Dave O'Brien, and very happy to have with us Buster Olney of baseball tonight. Buster, the timing is right because the trade deadline is looming. Great to have you with us. First question is, because we're at the Cardinals here in town, is the deal involving Oswalt to the St. Louis club, is that dead in the water?
It's certainly on life support because the bottom line is that the Cardinals have a difficult time matching up with what the Houston Astros are going to require to trade them their signature star. And we know that Roy Oswalt would love to go to the would love to go to the Cardinals. We know that the Astros feel like a deal could be worked out, but it would take a ton of prospects in order to convince Drayton McClain to put his star player on a platter for a division rival.
Buster, how about Adam Dunn? There's got to be a lot of teams out there that would like to add that big bat.
There are. And what you have right
Reyes
now.
with a base hit here. He's 2 for 3.
And what you have right now is a situation where the Nationals would like to sign Adam Dunn to an extension, but on their terms, on 2 years. He's looking for a Jason Bay type deal of 4 years and $60 million. So if they can't work out an agreement here in the next 72 hours, the expectation is, yes, they're going to move him. The team most interested, the Chicago White Sox, so far asking price is very large. The Nationals have asked the White Sox at the beginning for Carlos Quentin. Then they talked about Gordon Beckham. Nationals are also talking to the Tampa Bay Rays. Of course, Adam Dunn would fit in so perfectly in the middle of their lineup. I think the Yankees are hovering a little bit on this one as well.
Well, Buster, speaking of the Yankees, we heard a rumor that Jose Guillen was going there until he didn't run out a ball the other day. It looks like if they need anything, it might be a bat.
Yeah, and they've been talking about getting someone who's capable of playing third base, not because they think Alex Rodriguez is going to break down, but they feel like if that hip becomes any kind of an issue down the stretch, they want to have someone who's capable of filling in for a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time. And if they don't get, someone along the lines of a Ty Wigginton, and they know the Orioles don't like to trade in their division, they had been talking about a Johnny Peralta. I do think they're going to get a right-handed bat one way or the other. Guillen is actually someone that they feel like they'll talk about after the waiver period starts.
Luis Castillo bouncing into a double play here, 6-4-3. So 2 men gone. Buster, a name for you, Prince Fielder, and the likelihood that he might be moved. I know he's talked about it. He said, I've read everything, I've heard everything. I'm not taking anything personally. What are the chances?
I think the chances are pretty low at this point. Now, the Brewers kind of made up their mind that they want to decide what was going to happen today before they wanted to decide whether or not to trade a bunch of players, and they had a bad day today. Maybe this will be the impetus, and they know they probably are not going to be able to re-sign him. Scott Boras, his agent, is looking for a contract north of what Ryan Howard's getting now, 7 years and $169 million. But here's the thing. There are not a lot of teams in position to give the Milwaukee Brewers what they're looking for. The team most aggressive in these conversations so far have been the Chicago White Sox. But as one executive told me, they can't imagine the White Sox getting Fielder without giving up Gordon Beckham, who the White Sox really like.
Buster, has anything happened today so far?
Well, Johnny Peralta got traded from Cleveland to Detroit, and there are a lot of conversations, guys, around Ted Lilly. The expectation is he is going to move before the deadline. The teams most involved in conversations for Ted Lilly, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and there's some people wondering if at some point the Cardinals and the Cubs might be able to talk about a Ted Lilly deal.
Pagan in, and he takes a strike. Well, Buster, thanks for taking the time out. I know it really gets fun for you, and particularly busy here in the next few days. Maybe fun's not the way because you're going to be blown over by all the activity maybe, but thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Buster Olney from Baseball Tonight. As Pagan takes another strike, he has walked and doubled in this one.
We had a shot earlier of Omar Minaya with his cell phone in his hand. I wonder if that was Buster he was talking to.
It could very well be. General manager of the Mets there on your left.
They got to find some pitching. I mean, this big, beautiful ballpark. There's a chance still to win there.
Good place to pitch. I think Jaime Garcia's figured that out. A 10-pitch fifth inning for the youngster. See what happens with the Mets, if anything. Right now, they're down by 4 at the end of 5.
ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball, presented by Captain Morgan, is brought to you by the Denny's 2468 value menu. Great deals on 16 different meals. And visit ESPN.com/Denny's to find out how to get your next meal on the house.
Top of the 6th inning, back in New York, 6-2 St. Louis. Santana back out there. There's really been 2 different pitchers tonight. A guy got roughed up big time in the first inning. And then Johan Santana ever since then. One man out of Schumacher, grounds to short before the game. This is highly unusual. The man on the right, terrific gentleman, Fred Wilpon. He's the owner of the New York Mets. He's talking with Howard Johnson and some of the players as well. Howard Johnson has been known to be on the hot seat, possibly to be fired in some circles. They say he will be fired or was very close to getting fired. But look at the sheer amount of time that the owner of the ball club spent around the batting cage before the game tonight. It was about an hour.
Well, you know what's strange to me about that is that it happened on the field. I mean, is this sending a message to somebody? What exactly is going on here? Owners meet with their coaches and players all the time, but it's never as obvious as that.
Right, scoops and fires, 4 out, number 2. And I guess one way I looked at it was that was Fred Wilpon's attempt to be kind of a soothing hand, because it looked like the ball club was in disarray coming off a 2-9 road trip. Bounced back last night, won the ball game 8-2. Howard Johnson said to be in trouble. Maybe he was trying to calm that a little bit.
You know, it very well could be, Obi. I talked to a lot of players today, David Wright for one, and they believe in Howard Johnson. They say it's not him. We're the guys. We're the problems. We've got track records. We've all had a history of putting up big numbers. You look at Jason Bay. You look at Beltran. Frank Coors had big years. David Wright himself. I mean, there's a lot of ability out there that's just not producing. You can't just always think that we get rid of one guy, it's going to change everything. Collectively, this team has the potential to get a lot better.
I never understood that with the hitting coach anyway. Why the hitting coach was supposed to be fired as soon as the club went south offensively. Because he can only do so much. He can't go out there with the bat and wrap 4 hits.
Well, and there's only so much you can do in this ballpark as a hitting coach. This is as big a ballpark as there's ever been in baseball. Right? I mean, they're still using the same BP balls they used last year.
Phillies did it earlier this year, of course, Milt Thompson, but that's a change that seldom pays immediate dividends.
How about that? I mean, changing hitting coaches, a team that's been to the World Series the last 2 years.
That's right. 2-2 fought off foul here by John Jay, who's gone 2 for 3. He's had a good night. The rookie with a pair of singles. He has some power too.
I've learned a long time ago, you don't fool people in the clubhouse. I mean, those are the guys that they're in there, they're playing hard, the chemistry is still good there. They've still got a chance to turn it around. I think that's what you talk about rather than people losing their jobs.
2-2 wrapped in another base hit, his 3rd of the ball game. Jay now 3 for 4. A 2-out single. Let's toss it back to the studio for an update.
This update brought to you by Avidart. Andres Torres of the Giants, 7 career home runs coming into the season. This his 10th, and that's a splash landing into McCovey Cove. Look out for the Giants. They've won 16 of their last 20. They're just 2.5 games out in the National League West.
Anish, thank you very much. And talk about the offense for San Francisco. We all know they can pitch. Albert Pujols has been pitched very tough tonight. He is 0 for 3. A pop to second, a deep liner to center. He's also popped out foul to third.
Talking to Bruce Bochy a couple of days ago, he's still livid about the play at home plate. Umpire Phil Cuzzi called the guy out. Should have been safe. They would have swept the New York Mets. Instead, they went on to lose that ball game.
Liner into left field. That'll settle down for a base hit. Albert's first knock tonight. That moves John Jay into scoring position. Back-to-back singles. That's a dozen hits now for St. Louis against Santana.
You know, it's very seldom that we replay a 2-out base hit by Albert Pujols, but it's been a while for the big guy. Take a look here at the swing. That's an off-speed pitch, the change-up on the outside corner. Look at him there. He's all spread out, getting the foot down. But even on that pitch right there, and we've seen him all night, he's frustrated because he's still a little bit quick, and he's out in front. You know, everybody talking about Howard Johnson and the offensive struggles there. What about Mark McGwire? I mean, the Cardinals have not performed offensively as they were expected to do.
Dan Worthen coming out here. His second mound visit tonight. We showed you Santana is over 100 pitches. They have bullpen activity. Manny Acosta now throwing in the Met pen.
This has nothing to do with Matt Holliday. This is all about just giving a 31-year-old guy who has, I mean, after that first inning, he sucked it up. He got tough. He got deeper into the ball game. Let him take a breather. Think about what he might have left. Right now, from the neck down, Johan Santana is at his worst. Physically, there's not a whole lot left there. So that means from the neck up, you've got to be at your best. What have you done? You know that in the last at bat, Holliday tried to go to the opposite field. A situation like this, you might try to run that cutter in on his hands just to get rid of him with 2 outs.
Holliday's cooking. He's hitting 13 in a row. Santana knows that. He's already allowed the 2-run homer to him tonight. Holliday 1 for 3. 13-game hitting streak, and he takes ball 1. Back to the homer in the first inning.
No, this was actually a changeup, and you take a look at the glove down and away, comes back to the heart of the plate, and you do that to a big, strong man, particularly like you said, a guy that's on fire. He's going to lose it.
He's hit 8 home runs this month, 2 on, 2 out, and it's inside. It's funny when you're talking about McGwire. We had a shot of Mark McGwire. Noticeably skinnier. You can't help but notice that.
Not even the same guy, is he?
I mean, I know it's been some time since he's played, but it's amazing.
He made some admissions, got some things off his chest.
The 2-0 pitch, swing and a foul back, and because he did it, performance-enhancing drugs, he's cost himself a spot in the Hall of Fame in all likelihood.
Well, I mean, he admitted that he did it for what, 10-some years, and if you look at those numbers, that pretty much throws a blanket over the whole body of work. I mean, that it was like 450 homers during the time period where he said that he was, you know, he used steroids.
The 2-1 to Holliday. That'll miss a little bit low. 3-1. So he is into a hitter's count here with Jay and Pujols on. 6-2 St. Louis. Activity in the bullpen.
He's been waiting on another changeup this whole at bat. Johan's tried to run that fastball in. He's missed 3 times with that location.
Holliday got off to a slow start, but he's drilling the ball now, and that one is fair to right field. That'll bring in Jay. Pujols heading around second. Picked up quickly by Francoeur. Pujols takes a wide turn and stops. It's a double for Holliday. That could be the end of Santana. Second and third, another run in. That makes it 7-2. And here comes Manuel.
What an outstanding approach. And he stayed with it throughout that at bat, strictly looking away for a pitch that he could handle. If he gets a changeup, he's going to be on it. If it's a fastball away, he's not going to pull off of it. elevated. Once again, the command on that fastball really wasn't there the whole night. Drills it down into the corner. That's a great job by Jeff Francoeur to get to that ball, to get it back in, to keep one more run from scoring.
That is a career high 13 hits allowed by Johan Santana. He is knocked out of the ball game. Holliday with 3 RBIs and counting. 7-2 St. Louis. While we were watching the at-bat of Alex Rodriguez, here's what unfolded in New York. The final out as Acosta came out of the bullpen with runners at second and third, and he strikes out Yadier Molina.
Good hard slider off the outside corner there to, still keep it a ball game. Even though the Mets are down by 5, they exploded last night for 8 runs off of Adam Wainwright. The ability, you look at the lineup, is definitely there. The results for the most part this year, though, have not been there for the Mets.
Santana knocked out after 5 2/3, a career high 13 hits allowed, as they really charged him out of the gate, swinging at the first pitch often and hitting him pretty hard. Here's David Wright, who would like to hit some hard. He is 0 for 2 and has just 2 hits since the All-Star game 2 weeks ago. He's been in a slump, 8 for his last 47 with 1 homer and 4 RBIs since the break.
You have to realize, for the most part, off Garcia, you're going to hit the ball on the ground. I mean, he's got some late sinking life to that fastball, so figure out where you want to hit it.
Garcia 9-4, the rookie from Mexico. Came into the ball game with the number 2 ERA in the league at 2.21. Fly ball well hit left field, backing up Holliday. It's over his head to the base of the wall. Heading in for second right. Here's the throw. The tag will not get him, or now he's off the bag and he's going to be tagged out. David Wright, that's the way it's going for him. Trying to scamper around the tag, and he is out. Boy, Holliday plays this ball very well.
You just kind of wonder, though, who's in that uniform of David Wright. The first 2 at-bats, we saw him up with men on base, and they were unproductive outs. Now you get the leadoff man on. You're down by 5 runs in the bottom of the 6th inning. Holliday plays it outstanding, but you know what? You cannot get thrown out at second base in that situation. David Wright would be the first to tell you that.
Resignation as he put his hands on his knees and took the tag. Here's Beltran with a fly to left field. Holliday backing up, that one into the corner, and that ball is gone. A home run for Carlos Beltran. That is number 1 for Beltran, and now the base running mistake by Wright really hurts, even more so. That makes it a 7-3 ball game.
I would imagine Tony La Russa is going to make a phone call to that bullpen. The strength of Garcia is getting the ball on the ground, keeping it out of the air. The last 2 guys have hit it either to the wall or beyond the wall in left field. Well, that's got to be a great sign for the Mets that Beltran, 2 hits last night. He's been on base a couple of times here tonight.
Hit the ball hard and making it out in the 3rd inning. So the bullpen is alive here, and that brings up Mike Hessman. 2-run double and a ground out. Boggs, the right-hander, starts to quickly get loose. Rocketed. Here comes Rasmus to make the catch, but that ball is hit hard. So Garcia is not fooling anybody here in the 6th inning.
Well, he's really lucky. I mean, as you say, it should be 7-4. You go back to a couple of non-productive outs in this ball game for the Mets earlier. It could be 7-5, 7-6. That ball hit right on the button. A nice night on the part of Mike Hessman so far.
Holliday with a solid defensive play. Here's Francoeur, a little dribbler, swinging at the first pitch. Garcia on to first base to get him. Winds up being a fast inning, but some rockets. He only threw 7 pitches, but several of those were hit right on the button, including Beltran's a home run to left field that got over the wall. It is 7-3 St. Louis at the end of 6. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball coming up at 8 Eastern. It's the Dodgers and their longtime rival, the San Francisco Giants. And then the National League East takes center stage on ESPN Monday night, 7 Eastern. These Mets against the Atlanta Braves. See if that burner on David Wright will have healed up by then. Took a pretty good one on his right arm. We gave you a look at his slide. As he is cut down, trying to extend that single into a double. Ill-advised. And he is wearing the evidence of that.
You know what you could see him during that slide, almost kind of pull it up mid-slide because of the pain that he felt then. I'm sitting here, this isn't the David Wright that we have seen for the last 5 years. A couple of hits in the All-Star game. He's hitting 5 straight All-Star games. I just wonder if he's not maybe feeling the pressure of his hitting coach, who's a guy that he believes in. I mean, he had Howard Johnson at the minor league level, and again, just trying to do too much.
And they remain very close. Well, the left-hander Hisanori Takahashi coming on 7-5 with a 4.52 ERA. Many thought he was going to start tonight. Santana did instead, and maybe it should have been Takahashi the way it turned out for Santana, who was just drilled in the first inning, gave up 6 runs, worst first inning of his career, lasted only 5 2/3, charged with the 7 runs. Colby Rasmus fouls that one away. He's had a good night, a double and a single, but then again, most of the Cardinals have had a good night with the bats, particularly Matt Holliday, who's driven in 3 with a home run and a double. And the young outfielder John Jay, who's gone 3 for 4. Takahashi to the plate, and it's foul tipped into the middle.
Got a lot of information on Takahashi if you want it.
What do you have?
Well, about a week ago, he was the guy projected to be the starting pitcher tonight. I couldn't believe it, so do about 3 hours of homework on him, and then they got me with Pelfrey the next day.
Yeah, this one was kind of up in the air, at least publicly, who was going to start. You wonder if there was some gamesmanship going on from the Mets side, or was it indecision, or what was it?
Why not announce 10 days ago that he's going to pitch every 5th day the rest of the year? Well, we weren't told till last night after the game.
Would have saved you a lot of homework, partner, as Rasmus pops it up.
I wonder when he was told.
Yeah.
You know, I did not get a chance to talk to him. I don't usually talk to the starting pitcher. I didn't talk to him tonight. I wonder if he was told last night and maybe a little bit out of sorts trying to get started.
So if you would, because for some it's the first time they've ever seen Takahashi, your entire homework assignment, can you unload that right now?
Outstanding breaking ball. Fastball anywhere from 88 to 92. Outstanding in his last start, so be it a loss against the Dodgers 2-0.
Brendan Ryan here, he's 0 for 2. He takes ball 1. Now we understand Scott Podsednik has just been traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers for 2 minor leaguers.
Even with all of the problems with the ownership there in LA, you knew Ned Colletti once again was going to make something happen. Podsednik, the guy, he's got a World Series ring from back with the White Sox. He can play anywhere in the outfield, can lead off for you.
Tyler Green on deck. He will hit for Garcia.
Yeah, the guy's had a great shot of Garcia talking with Wainwright and Carpenter. They were kind of rehashing what his outing was like in hopes of him picking up his 10th victory tonight.
Well, he gave up 2 runs in the first inning, but Santana gave up 6. Now 7-3 Cardinals. High pop-up foul. They'll twist back out of play.
Just kind of thinking about a 24-year-old pitcher in his first year at the big league level. How much help? It's Kyle Loesch that's on the left there. Wainwright on the right. You know, Carpenter's not far away. To have those guys as mentors and guys to look up to and learn from, and then to have Dave Duncan as your pitching coach. Wow.
No wonder he's 9-4. Could be 10-4 at the end of the night as a rookie. Talking about Jaime Garcia. Ryan out in front, and down he goes. He strikes out, 2 away. As we toss it back to the studio for an update, here's Anish.
Time now for the 4th, 7th inning stretch. Arizona and Philadelphia. Edwin Jackson on the mound in the 6th. Carlos Ruiz down the line. That's a 2-run double. Dominic Brown, Philadelphia's top prospect, scoring on the play. Ruiz a couple of hits. Brown a couple of hits in his major league debut. Phillies on top 5-0, bottom 7.
How about that? Phillies on their way to winning their 7th straight ball game, still without Chase Utley.
And Dominic Brown jumping right into the fray. Here's Tyler Green pinch hitting. 273, 2 homers, 8 runs driven in. Batting in the 8th spot. Of course, La Russa bats as pitcher 8th. Garcia done for the night, but in line for the win.
You know, people might wonder, where did Garcia come from? Back in 08, he pitched at 3 different levels. He injured somewhere along the way, had Tommy John surgery. 09, as you'd expect, began the year on the DL, returned back in July, had 9 total starts. Then he got into the postseason where he was 2-0 in AAA last year for the Cardinals. Now he's in the big leagues after win number 10.
Boy, another off-speed pitch and a dandy to Fan Green, and 1-2-3 they go. So the Met reliever does his job. We're in the middle of the 7th. It is 7-3 St. Louis. Welcome back to Wednesday Night Baseball, presented by Captain Morgan. Sunset here in New York City in Citi Field. 7 runs, 13 hits for the St. Louis Cardinals. For the Mets, 3 runs on 6 hits. Neither side has committed an error, and it's now into the hands of the bullpens. Here's the big right-hander Mitchell Boggs. As he comes out of the bullpen on in relief of Garcia, who went the first 6. He was certainly serviceable. 6 hits, 3 runs.
Well, and Boggs has been outstanding this year. A big power guy, a strike thrower.
Josh Thole, rookie catcher, will bat for Blanco here. Looks like he'll stay in the ball game.
Well, an easy move for Jerry Manuel. The left-handed pitcher leaves, the right-hander comes in. You get rid of your right-handed hitter for your left-handed hitting catcher.
Thole's done very good work. He's picked up a lot of the Mets catching lately with Barajas out. Thole originally called up to provide some depth, and they intended to send him back to the minors, but Blanco was also a little nicked up for a time there, so they held on to 3 catchers for a while, and he's hit the ball very well. He's hitting .382.
You know, we've not talked much about that tonight. Blanco outstanding defensively and then hitting for a nice average this year, but Barajas was the power source from the catching position for Jerry Manuel. Already Barajas had 12 home runs this year.
2-1 pitch popped him up, but that'll twist foul out of play. Chris Carter also available to hit tonight, and Carter's on deck, so Jerry Manuel is going to use him here.
You know, you've only got so many bullets to fire, and you definitely don't want to wait till somebody can bring their closer in. The only difference is this guy right here might be the Cardinal closer.
Yes.
In the not too distant future.
Number descends in the bullpen for the Mets. Again, Santana went short tonight, shockingly, because he had been so brilliant in the month of July, but didn't finish July with anything other than a very loud thud. He went 5 2/3, gave up a career-high 13 hits. Lopez snags it to his left and guns on to Pujols. 1 man gone.
Let's take a look at the night of Garcia here. Take a look at the late life. Look at the cut fastball in. Look at the sinking fastball away, the broken bat. Not so much that he's commanding it from side to side, but look at the late life and the tilt to both sides of the plate. That's a Dave Duncan specialty right there. We've talked many times about, you know, the rudder kind of being, you know, this being the ship on the ocean, the thumb being the rudder, creating the movement. That cut fastball where Dave Garcia just, I mean, Dave Duncan talks about throwing the pitch, throwing your fingers through the outer half of the baseball. Obviously, on a 4-seam fastball, your fingers are a little bit wider, so you create the kind of rotation like that of shooting a free throw in basketball. On the cutter, you just simply slide the index finger over and you throw a fastball. You let the grip create the movement, in that late life that Garcia had in on the right-handed hitter. You get the sinker going the other way. You don't have to command anything. You put your infield into play, and as Dave Duncan has always preached, you keep the ball out of the air.
Here's Jose Reyes stepping in and looking at a strike. He's gone 2 for 3, including a bunt single. All I have to say about that is it sounds very impressive, and Ryne Sandberg is going to love you as his pitching coach in Chicago next year. You are going to be the epitome of a great pitching coach for the Cubs.
You know, you're trying to get rid of me, aren't you?
No, I don't want you going anywhere, but I mean, I hear the rumors and I read like everybody else.
I tell you what, over the last 10 years broadcasting for ESPN, being around Dave Duncan and some of the great pitching, Larry Rothschild, Mike Maddox, I mean, you learn a lot of things that I wished I would have known years ago.
You might have done something like win a Cy Young. Reyes flies out to center, 2 for 4 tonight, and we have wrapped up 7 innings here in New York. We thought it would be a pitcher's duel. Didn't start out that way. 7-3 St. Louis.
ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball is presented by Captain Morgan. There are captains in every crew. Calling all captains. Drink responsibly. And in part by the Denny's 2468 value menu. Great deals on 16 different meals. And visit ESPN.com/Denny's to find out how to get your next meal on the house.
It's the 8th inning at Citi Field, and the Mets are on to their 4th pitcher. It is 7-3 St. Louis. Number 9 man Schumacher goes after the first pitch and fouls it away. Thrown by Elmer Descends. He's 2-1 with a 154 earned run average.
Well, having an outstanding year. The 39-year-old right-hander from Hermosillo, Mexico. Man, has he been around. He's been in Japan. He's pitched in the Mexican League. His professional career started back in 1993. Tell you what, it's pretty impressive that he's still throwing the ball as well as he is.
And throwing to a rookie catcher as Tolley stays in the game for the Mets. Felipe Lopez on deck, and then John Jay here for the Cardinals, who got 6 of their 7 in the first inning. Stunning fashion, really, against Johan Santana because of who was on the mound for the Mets, and that was a career high 13 hits allowed by Johan tonight. He just didn't have it, whatever the reason may be, in a month where he has had everything going, and that is in there for called strike 3. 1 man gone in the 8th. Let's go to Anish Shroff back in the studio for Baseball Tonight in game update.
All right, thanks, guys. Might remember yesterday, Houston straight hit by a liner in batting practice before the Rockies-Pirates game. Look what happens in the first inning. Ross Ohlendorf takes a Troy Tulowitzki line drive off the right side of his face. Ohlendorf never left his feet, but did have to leave the game. This game tied at 1 in the 3rd.
Goodness gracious, it's always very frightening. Lopez lifts a first pitch swinging pitch into center field, and backing up Beltran for the 2nd out.
Lopez 0 for his last 3, but boy, I really think it was the first pitch of the game that set the tone for that first inning. I mean, he got a fastball, and it was one that he could handle. He lined it for a base hit, and as you mentioned, it seemed like everybody wanted to jump on that first or second pitch that first inning.
I am not making fun here. Did you ever get drilled by a line drive on the head?
No.
You never did? You were able to stay out of the way?
No, I mean, I got hit everywhere else. But I'm telling you that you know, there were a lot of them that went by where you kind of checked for leaks. Like, you know, like I know that hit me somewhere. But that is scary. I mean, there's a lot of times there's absolutely nothing you can do.
Well, it's been an impressive performance by the youngster at the plate, John Jay. He's a 3-time All-American out of the University of Miami. 3 hits tonight, 3 for 4.
He's hit the ball hard all 4 times. He lined out to left field his first at bat.
Takes one up and in around the shoulder. Jay has some power. He has some speed.
So here's something right here that a lot of scouts will check out. All right, you just knocked him down. What's his approach on the next pitch going to be? Is it something you need to do more of?
Up with it, Hessman will take it to the bag, and that's a fast inning for the veteran Descends. He needs only 9 pitches to get through it. Zipping along in the late stages here, middle of the 8th, 7-3 St. Louis on a Wednesday. MLB.TV. It's baseball everywhere. Get over 100 live out-of-market games per week in HD quality where available on your computer. Visit MLB.TV for details. Last half of the 8th inning, Rick Sutcliffe, Dave O'Brien alongside, a 7-3 St. Louis lead. They were up 6-0 after a half inning in this ball game tonight in Queens. Luis Castillo has gone 0 for 3 for the Mets. He's lined to right, grounded to second, and hit into the only double play in the game. 6-4-3 in the fifth. Angel Pagan after him, and then the slumping David Wright. Loop toward left. Holiday, a sliding play, can't make the play. He drops the ball, and Castillo is safely on to first.
Well, that's the only thing that Matt Holliday has not done well tonight. Terrific effort there.
Let's talk about rookie pitchers, and the guy we saw tonight, Garcia, who went 6. He's in line for the win.
Well, about to go to 10-4. That was his 20th start. You look at Mike Leake, never saw the minor leagues for a day. He got off to a great start. Big part of the reason Cincinnati is there. Look at Nice there. He continues to throw the ball well for the Mets. Boy, just the influx and the great young pitchers, and none with more talent than Steven Strasburg. You just have to wonder when they start talking about that shoulder just how serious it is.
Castillo on with a base hit. Pagan has gone 1 for 2 with a double tonight. There's Nice, who's given the Mets a lift. Of course, it's a great ballpark to pitch in.
Yeah.
No question about it that Citi Field is made for pitchers. Jason Bay has found that out.
You know, I talked to a lot of the Met players. Why do you guys play so much better here? And that was the number one thing that was said, was that the pitchers take the mound here with a lot more confidence. Now their batting average on the road is not what it should be. There's a lot more ability than that, but there is a lot of confidence for a pitcher coming into this ballpark normally.
The Mets are losing tonight, but they are 31-16 here at Citi Field as opposed to 20-33 on the road.
And you know what's unbelievable? That the number that jumped out at me, Johan Santana, the second half of the year after the All-Star break, is 62-19 coming into play. You mentioned throughout his career he's won 2 out of every 3 decisions. He's even better this time of the year, and yet with 2 outs in the first inning they were able to put up 6 runs against him.
David Wright on deck, Castillo at first, and that misses.
You know, that's part of the issue too with Darryl Cousins behind home plate. This has always been a ball. I mean, the K zone there shows it just slightly off, but the strike zone is always going to be smaller than normal. And you know, there's a lot of things that might have gone into that first inning. I mean, Garcia walked 3 guys. He doesn't walk people in the first inning.
As you say, Darryl Cousins' reputation, it is a postage stamp kind of a strike zone. It's very tiny, and it has been for a lot of years. Does that mean that he doesn't have the strike zone right, however?
That means that as a pitcher, you've got to make an adjustment. You're not going to get that. You know, you can't go 3-2 and try to paint a corner. And that's what Johan finally figured out, was I just need late life with movement. I need to change speeds in the zone and hopefully stay down. The corners don't exist.
St. Louis on top 7-3 in the bottom of the 8th inning. High fly ball right field. This is well hit. Jay on the run to the track, and that is out of here. A home run for Pagan. And don't look now, but the Mets are creeping back into this thing. That makes it 7-5. Pagan, who many say is the MVP of the Mets this season, doesn't have gaudy numbers, but he has been their most consistent player every day. A 2-run homer.
I tell you what, when you hit a ball to that part of this ballpark where it's between 378 and 415, and you know that you got it, you absolutely crushed it. Welcome to baseball 2010. Everybody, when they hit one that far, they're going to stand there and watch it. They're going to be all over the news, Sports Center, baseball tonight. We'll have all of that. But when you hit a ball to that part of the ballpark and you know it, you've done something.
So the Cardinals' once comfortable lead, not so comfortable anymore in the 8th inning.
This could be a huge point for both of these organizations.
Wright takes one inside, had a base hit his last time up, but he was thrown out rather foolishly trying to extend that to a double. He was gunned down by Holiday in left field. As Reyes now throwing the bullpen for St. Louis.
I mean, you think about it. We've been reading the tabloids here the last couple of days. If they don't come back, there might be a new manager here tomorrow. There might be a new hitting coach. They talk about a lot of the changes. You know, on the other hand, I mean, you look at the Cardinals, boy, they have really been struggling. I mean, they got to Wainwright last night. Boy, but you speak of struggling. I mean, tonight, when you think about this game, you've got to start with David Wright.
Right in a long slump.
Such a good player. I mean, 5 consecutive All-Star games. He's hitting all 5. Just seems out of sorts tonight.
12 hits in his last 61 at bats. Hit toward the hole. Backhanded by Ryan. He is not going to get him, and it's a base hit. That's 3 consecutive hits for the Mets to start the 8th. And here comes Tony La Russa.
David thought he beat it. I guarantee you he can't run any harder than that. Razor Shines, the first base coach, thought he beat it. He signaled safe. But DJ Rayburn, the first base umpire, signaled that he was safe. Albert Pujols thought he was out, and now Tony La Russa is going to stake his case.
Here's another look. Ryan going deep to the hole. The off-balance chuck.
You know, just from the naked eye up here, I mean, it looked like he beat it out. I mean, he was going so hard down that line. Brendan Ryan made a terrific play. Albert might have tried to sell that play with a rookie umpire at first base. I think that the umpire, I think DJ Rayburn did an outstanding job and got it right. And look at this. David Wright on first base represents the tying run at home plate with Carlos Beltran.
And Duncan pops out. He wants to make a mound visit now. The Mets have suddenly come to life. Remember, they scored 8 last night, which is an onslaught of runs. The way the Mets have been swinging the bats this year, they scored a total of 23 runs on their last road trip, during which they went 2-9. Reyes appears ready.
I don't think Dave Duncan's going to make that move. I think that they are going to hope that Boggs can get through Carlos Beltran, because in the on-deck circle, you've got Mike Hessman. He hits right-handed. If you go bring in Reyes, Hessman's going to hit. If you go get your right-hander, then Jerry Manuel can go to his left-handed first baseman and Ike Davis. So, boy, the wheels are really spinning right now in both dugouts.
So they'll stick here with Boggs against Beltran, hitting on the left side. He's already homered tonight. He appears to be getting his swing back in order. He's also hit a hot line drive to left that was caught. 7-5, nobody out. And the right-hander deals, and it misses away for ball 1.
The Mets have got to be hoping that getting Carlos Beltran back will be a lot like what happened in 2005 when the Houston Astros got him. He carried them all the way to the World Series by hitting home runs just like that.
1-0, he lays off. Now 2-0. Cardinals had a 6-0 lead after the first half inning of play. The Mets came back and got 2 in the bottom half. And then we didn't have a run in the game until the 6th inning. The Cardinals and the Mets both scored a single run in that frame. Now the Mets with 2 here in the 8th. Cut on and missed, 2-1 on Beltran. And the man on deck, Mike Hessman, essentially a career minor leaguer for 15 years. Just a handful of ball games at the big league level, but tonight he almost hit a grand slam in the first inning. And he's hit almost 330 minor league homers. Fouled back 2-2 on Beltran.
Boy, he's starting to get his timing back. A couple of hits last night. Been on base a couple of times tonight. That was a typical Carlos Beltran swing there. Just missing that fastball.
It's Jason Mott Throwing on your left. K-Rod has gotten up for the Mets. Cut on and missed. Down he goes. Beltran whiffs. Big K there. One man out in the bottom of the 8th.
Big number there as well. 96 miles an hour. Boggs just reaching back and blowing away Carlos Beltran for the New York Mets. It's just right down the middle. That's good old-fashioned hard ball. You can't hit this.
That's how they do it down in Dalton, Georgia, where Mitchell is from. And a batter will be Hessman, 1 for 3 with that double, but Molina wants a mound visit.
Well, it's all about the matchup that Tony La Russa wants. I mean, does he want to bring Ike Davis into the ball game, or does he want to see Hessman one more time?
Now, the fascinating thing among many when you talk about Mike Hessman is that he's been at the big league level for just a couple of cups of coffee, less than 170 major league at bats. He's playing in the majors tonight for the first time since 2008. Swinging a bat for the first time at a major league level since 08. But in each of his last 3 major league games, he's hit a home run. He almost did it in the first inning when he knocked a double. The bases loaded off the left field fence, and he gets drilled. He gets hit by the pitch, and that will put runners at first and second. The tying runs are on here in the 8th inning for the Mets.
Now I would imagine Tony's going to forget about Boggs and hope that Mott can be ready down in the bullpen. Here he comes, and you got to figure he's going to bring in the right-hander.
With Francoeur scheduled to bat. So the wheels really turning here late in the game. A game the Cardinals seem to have total control over very early. Well, they don't have it anymore. They do lead 7-5.
This update presented to you by Citgo, keeping you in the game. Cubs first baseman Derek Lee vetoed a trade to the Angels. Lee invoking a no-trade clause. He says he plans to play beyond this season and would like to do it with the Cubs. The Angels, they've gone through 6 first basemen since losing Kendry Morales. Let's go back to the Mets and the Cardinals at Citi Field. Dave O'Brien and Rick Sutcliffe.
Anish, thank you very much. The Mets threatening here. They already have 2 runs on the board in the 8th inning. They've closed the gap to 7-5. And Jason Mott, the right-hander, 3-2 at 238. Coming out of the bullpen, his 44th appearance. Francoeur goes after the first one. No shot there. A 97-mile-an-hour fastball.
It's going to be all about my fastball against your bat speed. Francoeur loves to hit the fastball. He'd like to have the radar gun number a little lower than that. That's not going to happen with Mott.
Wright and Hessman at second and first. Let's go back to yesterday. Francoeur with 2 men on.
Well, and one of the best pitchers in baseball on the mound, Adam Wainwright, missed his location with that cut fastball. You could see Molina sitting off the outside corner. That was the deciding blow in that 8-2 victory, the 3-run homer. That's exactly what the Mets need here.
Francoeur in right field tonight. He is 0 for 2 with a walk, which is a rarity for him. 2 balls and 1 strike. He's been spending a lot of time on the bench. And the reason he's in the lineup tonight is because Jason Bay ran into a wall 4 days ago at Dodger Stadium, and concussive symptoms have him out of the lineup for this series. So Pagan is playing in left field and Francoeur in right. Chance to really do some damage. He pops that one up back behind the plate and off into the stands, and the count 2-2. The Mets have really not been a good comeback team. 13 come from behind wins this season. That is the fewest in the National League.
And the Cardinals, as you mentioned earlier, have been the best team in the majors when they score first. 39-10 for Tony La Russa coming into tonight's affair.
And boy, did they score first tonight. The first 6 runs of the game in the first inning against Santana. And yet the Mets are coming back here. They have 4 base runners already in the bottom of the 8th inning. Swing and a foul back. Good rip by Francoeur. 2 balls, 2 strikes, 2 on, 1 out.
You know, I tip my hat to Johan Santana. Even though right now he's in line for the loss, the fact that he was able to get deep enough into the ball game to make this a ball game.
He went 5 2/3. 2-2 checked his swing and barely made contact there. Still 2-2 on Francoeur.
Or just a fastball decently located on the inner half of the plate. Looks like it would overpower the Mets right fielder.
Young Josh Thole on deck. He has been swinging a hot bat for the Mets.
Well, he's going to be facing Dennis Reyes when he comes up, if he comes up this inning.
Fouled back. You could hear the grunt by Francoeur. Really trying to.
I think they're both grunting.
Yeah.
When you throw every pitch at 98 miles an hour, you're putting a lot of effort into that. Both of these guys realizing what's at stake.
It's like watching a tennis match at the nearby U.S. Open. Right around the corner.
That's coming up before too long, isn't it?
Yes. Fixture here in the early part of the fall, late summer in New York. Wright getting his lead at second, Hessman at first. St. Louis looking for the double play ball. Again spoiled by Francoeur. And a lot of trade possibilities swirling around Francoeur. Some thought that he'd be gone maybe to Kansas City by now.
I think without the injury to Jason Bay, that probably would have happened. He's not going to be happy if he's not playing every day. 26 years of age.
7-5 St. Louis. It has gotten close. Here comes the 9th pitch of this at bat. Mott delivers, jammed him, popped it up and again over the screen. He'll do it again on 2-2.
A couple of years ago, you would have never thought Francoeur would ever leave the Atlanta Braves. 100 RBIs in back-to-back seasons. The great defense. All of a sudden, making contact became a problem.
And will not pitch. We had a shot there of Alex Cora, who recently, rather famously, blasted his Met teammates after a defeat for not being very serious about it, not taking it seriously. Inside their clubhouse, he was really ticked off.
That's leadership, and that's what he's been doing this whole game. He has had energy down there in the end of that dugout throughout, trying to get his team back into the game.
2-2 again. There's a drive left field, but backing up Holiday's underneath and will make the catch. Francoeur goes down. 2 away. It was a 10-pitch at bat.
What a battle. What a battle. He just never was quite able to catch up to the fastball. Blown away on the first one. All of a sudden, with 2 strikes, though, he started to make some contact. He wasn't able to make any kind of contact out in front of home plate. The fastball in was the one that continued to wear him out. That was a great at bat right there, just staying alive on that pitch. And you could see Mott continue to paint both of those corners, picking up the big out that he and the Cardinals needed.
Well, Tony La Russa wants Reyes here to take on Thole. And we'll be back in New York in a moment. 2 men on base for the Mets. The tying runs here in the bottom of the 8th at Citi Field. Bottom of the 8th inning. We've already seen a 2-run homer by Pagan in the inning. That's made it 7-5 St. Louis. Lead trimmed down, and here comes Dennis Reyes, the 33-year-old veteran, the left-hander, pitching for his 9th major league club.
Well, and he's made a real nice career out of situations just like this, getting one guy out.
Josh Thole, left-hand hitter, 23 years old, a rookie catcher. He takes ball 1. Let's toss it back to the studio to Anish Shroff for Baseball Tonight in-game updates.
All right, thanks, Dave. Alex Rodriguez at the plate in the 6th inning for the Yankees. His 4th at bat of the game. He's facing Jess Todd, who was actually acquired from St. Louis last year. A-Rod going for home run number 600. It's been 24 at-bats since he hit number 599. Let's take a listen to the Yes broadcast with Ken Singleton and John Flaherty.
Pitch is on the way, drives it down the right field line. Chu on the move, will not get it. It's a fair ball into the corner. Alex rounds first, headed to second. Here's the throw by Chu, and Rod is in there. He's not quite the greatest of all times yet, but he pulls the bag out of the ground. That's another way of stealing a base. A two-base hit for Alex Rodriguez.
So double for Alex Rodriguez. Let's get you back out to Shitty Field as the Mets threaten in the 8th.
Anish, thank you. That is high ball 4. So Reyes brought in to face this young hitter, walks him to load the bases for the New York Mets with 2 down in the bottom of the 8th. And Ike Davis being called on to hit now. Davis, who has been slumping lately, but has really given the Mets a lift.
Well, it's all that's left. I mean, he could go to Alex Cora, but you want your power source up here at this point. And it tells you right now that even though Jason Bay is still on the active list, he's not eligible. He's not available to pinch hit here tonight.
So Davis being announced, he's hitting just .206 in his last 17 games with 22 strikeouts in 68 at bats. That's with a man at every base in right, Hessman and Tolley. 2 down. Reyes against Davis. Has good power, and he takes one high ball 1.
Not bad. In fact, he actually hits better against left-handed pitching than right-handers. 241 against the right-hander, 274 against the southpaws, but it wasn't enough to get him into the lineup tonight against Jaime Garcia.
Yeah, really scuffling as of late. Hits the ball hard and through for a base hit. Right is in to score. Hessman lumbering in. The throw cut off. And the Mets have tied it.
Ike Davis was saying before the ball game he was happy for Mike Hessman. They were teammates earlier this year in AAA. Davis played first, Hessman played third. Davis got called to the big leagues right away. Hessman stayed at the minor league level, but he pulled for his teammate. It was Hessman that started the scoring in the first inning, the 2 runs that he drove in with the double off the wall, and the next 2 runs that were needed to tie the game. Ike Davis, I think a lot of that had to do with the way he went about his approach tonight. Not upset at not being in the lineup. There with 2 outs, a big base hit to tie this ball game. What a comeback for the New York Mets.
They were down 6-0 after a half inning tonight. Here comes La Russa yet again. He's wearing out a path between the dugout and the pitcher's mound. And the Mets come up from off the deck to tie the game. They have scored 4 here in the bottom of the 8th inning. And they also have the potential winning run 90 feet away. McClellan coming on. Well, the first inning was one story. Not a whole lot happened except the Mets were slowly starting to pick away until the bottom of the 8th inning. They have scored 4 times. Ike Davis comes off the bench and wraps a 2-run single to right. And here's Reyes with runners at first and third, and Kyle McClellan out of the bullpen.
Well, and an opportunity for Reyes to give the Mets the first lead of the night. It's not about who gets the first lead. It's about who has the last. He's trying to do that off Kyle McClellan.
The bearded right-hander, the 4th St. Louis pitcher in the inning, and it's fouled back by Reyes, who's gone 2 for 4 tonight with 2 singles. A base hit here would bring in Tolley from third base. And the fans here at Citi Field are going to blow the roof off it. Well, if it had a roof. 7-7, all tied up.
A tremendous crowd once again here in the middle of the week. They're coming out here still believing in this team.
1-1 breaking ball is low. 35,000. Tonight's paid attendance here in Flushing.
Right about that last night for the first game of a series when the team came off just a horrible West Coast trip.
2-1. He followed it all the way back into Molina's mitt. 3-1. The Mets have been the worst comeback team in the National League, but not tonight. Not on this Wednesday. And Reyes trying to cap it by putting them into the lead for the first time. He is the 9th Met to hit in the bottom of the 8th. Checked his swinger. Did he go? He went. That is strike 2. Reyes is going to bitterly complain here at Darrell Cousins. And Manuel's going to come out.
Jerry's going to get run if he argues this. He better just stay with. There you go. You better just stay with your guy. Try to keep him from getting thrown out.
Well, he missed the game yesterday because he was suspended after making contact with an umpire.
That's not a swing.
Cousins said it was. The count 3-2. Runner at first on the move, and the breaking ball misses, and that is ball forward. Reyes had a look over his shoulder at the home plate umpire on his way to first, but that's going to load him up.
I wouldn't be looking back if I'm Jose Reyes at that pitch. I agree with you. The previous pitch was ball 4. He didn't swing. This could have. I mean, there are some umpires that might have called that. Darrell Cousins won't. His strike zone not going to get any bigger. And look at this. The base is loaded. What a comeback. You think about the bench for Jerry Manuel. You think about the bullpen, the job they've done after Santana. One swing of the bat, they've got the lead.
Here's Luis Castillo. He takes ball 1. He started this rally. Seemed like a meaningless single at the time as they were down 7-3. But in this inning, 4 hits, 2 walks, and a hit batsman.
Well, it was the Cardinals batting around in the first inning that created 6 runs. Mets trying to do it again.
Bases loaded, and he looks at a strike. Coming up next on ESPN, Baseball Tonight with Steve Berthiaume, Aaron Boone, J.P. Ricciardi, and Buster Olney, who joined us earlier this evening, talking trades. K-Rod still throwing out there in the bullpen for New York. No place to put Luis Castillo in a tie game. Shows bunt and pulls it away. Until he had to scoot on back to third. 2 balls, 1 strike.
Molina is the one frustrated now. Molina just, I mean, he is livid. I talked about his toughness and how he turned right around, and you can't see what he's saying, but with the mask on, he had a lot to say to Darrell Cousins there. They've been back there working all night. Again, it's very rarely going to be called by Darrell Cousins.
The 2-1 to Castillo. He lets it go for ball 3.
This at bat has gotten walk written all over it. There's no way he's swinging here.
In there for a strike, and it's 3-2. 91 on the corner.
McClellan with 42 appearances this year has only walked 11 guys. This could be the 2nd consecutive walk with 1 long ball.
Castillo ready. McClellan deals. Ground ball right to the shortstop Ryan, who'll go to first base, and got it there in time, and that ends it. However, the Mets score 4 times. And they have tied the ball game. Remember, they were down 6-0 in this game. Pagan with a big blow, the 2-run homer, and Davis ties it with the 2-run single. We go to the 9th, 7-7 at Citi Field.
A lot of people upset with home plate umpire Darrell Cousins tonight. You look at Dave Duncan checking with Yadier Molina. Did he miss some pitches? Shakes his head. Yeah, he did. How many did he miss? Well, he missed at least 2.
Albert Pujols in the 9th. He looks at a strike. He's not happy with Cousins. K-Rod coming on. He's 3-2 with a 2.57 ERA and 21 saves for the Mets.
This is why you buy a ticket right here, isn't it? See these 2 guys go at it.
Fouled back by Albert on the night. He's 1 for 4 with a single.
Well, in his career against K-Rod, he's 1 for 3. The 2 times that he did make an out were both via the strikeout.
Pujols has been cool since the All-Star break. Still sitting at 70 RBIs, however, and 23 homers.
And still as dangerous as anybody in the game of baseball today.
Rodriguez has him down 0-2. Holiday on deck for St. Louis. That'll miss. 1-2. The crowd howling here at Citi Field.
You know, just kind of watching the way the Mets have gone about Albert Pujols tonight, staying away from him, lets you know that he may have some back issues. That core has got to be healthy for you to drive the ball away, and Albert has not been able to do that thus far tonight.
1-2, socked through the hole for a base hit. He does have a couple of singles tonight. He's now 2 for 5, and a good start to the 9th inning for the Cardinals.
Well, it was a good start because it wasn't a very good pitch. K-Rod trying to go to the outside corner. I mean, if Albert Pujols is healthy and strong, this isn't just a ground ball single to left field. This ball would have been driven a lot further than that. But once again, see how quick he is. To me, it's almost like he's favoring his back, trying to open up a little bit sooner, and he's hitting the ball off the end.
So now Holiday, who launched a 2-run homer in the first inning. He also has an RBI double. Pujols practically on the bag. You have to watch Albert Pujols, because if you don't pay attention, he will steal against you. Because you have Holiday at the plate right now. He's the hottest hitter. He's hitting 13 in a row.
You're right, though. He'll still run. I mean, he's got 11 stolen bases on the year.
Popped him up. Short right. Castillo is underneath. And a very dangerous hitter is set down rather meekly. 1 man away in the 9th inning.
Well, Matt Holliday just looking back, glaring at K-Rod here. The frustration as he runs off the field, knowing that he had an off-speed pitch up in the zone. When a guy's hot, they get upset when they have at bats like that.
When you're hot, you think you ought to hit everything 450 feet, right?
No question.
Pujols, by the way, leads the Cardinals with 11 steals. And here's Molina. He is 1 for 4 with a single. He's also struck out twice. Albert goes, threw his bat at it, made contact here.
Well, that was totally the hit and run that was put on there by Tony La Russa. Looks like Molina is really frustrated, because when that sign's on, you've got to swing the bat to protect the hitter. And I mean, it was just almost an impossible pitch to make contact with, but your job's to do that. Take a look. They holler, there he goes. Look at him just bury that fastball down and off the outside corner. The hit and run was on. Molina has got to protect his teammate there, and all they can do is throw the bat at it. The ball trickles into fair territory, and I think Yadier Molina feels like he gave away an at bat there.
Pujols is into second base, but with 2 down, they're going to walk Rasmus here, and Brendan Ryan is the man they want to pick on. He's hitting under 200.
Well, it was Brendan Ryan back in the first inning that was intentionally walked by Jerry Manuel. That came back to bite him when Garcia, the pitcher, got the base hit to drive in 2 runs. Eventually, later on in that inning, Ryan himself scored a run.
That's because, of course, La Russa hits his pitcher in the 8th spot. So ball 2 on Rasmus, who's hit 16 homers.
I think Jerry Manuel's had an outstanding ball game. I mean, you're going to put on an everyday player to face an opposing pitcher, particularly with Santana on the mound. It just didn't work out. That was not Jerry Manuel's fault in that situation. Going to his bullpen, going to exactly the right guys to keep the game. You know, it was 7 runs that Santana gave up. He hasn't given up another run, and he's picked exactly the right spot to use his pinch hitters.
And if you're just joining us, Johan Santana, who is having one of the great individual months in Met history, 3-0 with an ERA of 0.71, was rocked tonight for 6 runs in the first inning. He gave up 7 runs on a career high 13 hits in 5 2/3. Yet the Mets held it together and made a great comeback in the 8th inning. And now Randy Winn is being called on to bat now. Here's the counter move by Tony La Russa. It'll be the veteran Winn. So both managers really going to work here the last 2 innings in a big way. Albert Pujols, the go-ahead run at second base for St. Louis. Colby Rasmus has just been intentionally passed. And so Winn, who started the year with the New York Yankees, will come up to swing. Duncan on the horn. They are wearing out that telephone line to that bullpen.
A lot of at-bats for Randy Winn. A little bit of success against Rodriguez. 4 for 14, 286 with a homer.
It's a switch hitter. Up on the left side where he's hitting .315. Just 174 right-handed. Jumps on that one along the line. Fair ball. Esman the underhand flip to get the out, and that's it. They're going to strand 2. So the Mets have a chance to win it in their last at bat. We go to the bottom of the 9th inning at Citi Field. All tied. Cardinals 7, Mets 7. Well, you can bet on this. Nobody has gone home here tonight at Citi Field. A 7-7 tie. Angel Pagan will lead off the inning here against McClellan. Tied at 7. Bottom of the 9th. Pagan's had a big night. He has scored twice. He's doubled. He's also cracked a 2-run homer that made it a 2-run game in the 8th inning. And David Wright will follow him. First pitch was outside. This one in for strike.
One more swing of the bat like this one in the 8th inning, and the Mets will have won back-to-back ball games for the first time since interleague play back on June the 22nd and 23rd.
Took game 1 here last night. That's a ball to count 2-1. Cincinnati knocked around Milwaukee today 10-2. At the moment they have a half-game lead in the Central over the Cardinals pending the outcome of this one. Little dribbler to second. Schumacher up and over and gets it there in time. Aaron Miles now in the game at short, by the way, as we take a look at tonight's big assist brought to you by Mercedes-Benz.
You know, not many times do you talk about the defense of Matt Holliday, but you have to here. David Wright off the wall, the bare hand pickup, and the absolute perfect throw in time to get David Wright. What would have been a leadoff double may really be one of the game-changing plays here tonight.
Holliday's also driven in 3 runs. He's homered his 19th. Here's David Wright in a serious slump coming into tonight, but he does have 2 hits.
You know, everybody wanting to save the job of hitting Coach Howard Johnson, and all we know is what we read. We've not heard ownership talk about any changes. No one wanting to do that more, though, than the Mets third baseman.
2-0. Beltran, the on-deck hitter. Wright has really bounced back from a very strange season last year when he hit just 10 homers and drove in 72 runs.
Well, he talked about it being humbling. You know, he still hit over 300, but the power numbers weren't there.
Ground ball, base hit into left field, coming with 1 out in the 9th. So the Mets have a base runner, a 3-hit game for Wright. So perhaps his slump is over.
Well, and you know what? Kind of interesting that, you know, he'd be standing there next to Albert Pujols, because Albert had not been swinging the bat well until tonight. Albert has picked up a couple of base hits in his last 2 at-bats, and you know what? All 5 have been, you know, kind of alike. They've either been ground balls to left, or, of course, Wright hit the 1 ball good.
Here's Beltran taking a pitch into the dirt. Mets gunning for their biggest comeback of the season, down 6-0 after a half inning. Beltran has contributed with a homer. Right at first, 1 out.
David Wright's got to be careful about the pickoff with Molina.
Hard ground ball out of the range of Schumacher. Wright will stop at second base. Of course, he's already been thrown out there tonight. Back-to-back singles here for the Mets. And a winning run in scoring position.
A little bit surprised. I mean, that ball got in front of David in plenty of time. You know what a big outfield it is here. I kind of thought, I mean, you know, Jay can throw out there. I mean, he's a good defensive outfielder. He's got good speed to come get it. Kind of thought David might take a chance there to get to third with just the 1 out.
As mentioned, he's already been thrown out there at second base. You could forgive him for being a bit tentative.
How about this? The guy that started the scoring for the Mets?
The 32-year-old Mike Hessman. All of those at-bats in places like Macon and Danville and Richmond and Toledo and Greenville and Myrtle Beach. Essentially 15 years in the minor leagues. He's been up to the big leagues a handful of times. He can certainly hit it out. Fouls that one back. 329 minor league home runs.
You know what? He's had years in the minor leagues where he didn't play in front of as many people that are here right here tonight. Made a couple of nice defensive plays. I mean, that first double with 2 outs, that was huge. Just to get them on the board and give them some sign of life.
It was nearly a grand slam. Right in Beltran on in the 9th. Breaking ball, and that's in there and got him looking. He could not trigger. He strikes out. They're 2 gone.
Well, we've talked about all of the home runs that he hit at the minor league level. We've also got to talk about almost 2,000 career strikeouts, and it looks like Uncle Charlie's had been the problem.
Howard Johnson's reaction. He's been a man under fire here in New York. Well, here comes Frank Core, and Molina wants a visit with his pitcher. Mets trying to win it in 9 innings, a 7-7 tie.
Molina showing some more of that leadership. I mean, OB, you've known it since day one, talking about how Frank Core loves that first pitch. All right, instead of making, trying to get ahead with just something in the strike zone, you got to make that first pitch your best.
Last time up, Frank Core, before he flied out, had a 10-pitch at bat. But he is 0 for 3. He had a notion, but the breaking ball in the dirt for ball 1. David Wright at second. Carlos Beltran at first base. Was Wright is the only man who matters. If he scores, the Mets will cap their biggest comeback of the season from 6 runs down.
Core yelling to everybody out there, get your maximum lead. There's 2 out. If he starts to swing the bat, you start to run.
In there for a strike, 1-1. Bottom of the 9th here in New York. The Mets rallied to score 4 times in the 8th to tie it. 1-1 pitch into the dirt and gobbled up by Molina. Knocked down, 2 balls, 1 strike.
Obi, I was just thinking about the first pitch of that at bat. It bounced almost on home plate, and yet how we've grown to take Yadier Molina for granted. With a lot of people, 2 of these 3 pitches could have been wild pitches. This ball game's over with. Nothing gets by the Cardinal catcher, and nobody's even tried to steal a base tonight.
Popped him up into right field. Jay is there, and this one is going to extra innings. Tied at 7. We're going to the 10th. Frank Core had a chance to win it, but we will play on here in New York City. Cardinals 7 and the Mets 7. Into the 10th inning now at Citi Field. Cardinals and the Mets locked up at 7 apiece. Rick Sutcliffe, Dave O'Brien on a Wednesday night. Ryan Ludwig coming off the bench now for Tony La Russa. Certainly a home run capable hitter as he takes a breaking ball for a strike. K-Rod still on the hill for New York. Schumacher on deck, and then Lopez the top of the order. These 2 teams apparently really like playing extra innings against each other, as they did back in April in a long ball game. A swing and a miss, and quickly 0-2 on Ludwig, who is hitting .279 with 11 homers.
Well, the exact same 2 starting pitchers were on the hill back on the 17th of April when they went at it for 20 innings.
That's right. Santana and Garcia, who started tonight, were on the mound in that game. Another foul off to the right by Ludwig.
Not much experience between these 2 guys. Ludwig 0 for 2 against K-Rod.
Pelfrey, he had to close that game.
If I remember right, K-Rod got the win and Pelfrey got the save. And Pelfrey had pitched 2 days before that.
Yeah,
so
it was the first career save for Mike Pelfrey. That's correct. The 0-2 to Ludwig, and down he goes, swinging and missing for strike 3. It was back on April 17. The Mets and Cards played an epic 20 innings in St. Louis. It was scoreless through 18. The Mets scored in the 19th off outfielder turned pitcher Joe Mather, who was used along with Felipe Lopez on the mound. The Cards tied it in the bottom of the 9th against K-Rod. Jose Reyes sac fly gave the Mets the lead again off Mather in the 20th inning. And then Pelfrey came out of the bullpen to earn his first career save. Time of game 6 hours and 53 minutes, 20 innings. Here's Schumacher with a swing and a miss. He's 1 for 4 tonight with an RBI single in the first inning.
You know, we've got a pretty good history of sticking around for overtime as well.
Well, you and I particularly postseason games.
Just the 5 longest games in postseason history.
And this series closes out with a day game tomorrow. Fly to left field. Begun plenty of room behind him. 2 up and 2 down. Top of the order now for St. Louis. We go back to the studio for an in-game update on Anish Shroff.
We saw the Mets rally from 6 runs down. The Marlins were down 9-2, tied it in the 9th. But the Giants came back and won in the bottom of the 10th. Andres Torres, one of his 4 hits, his second career walk-off hit. San Fran has won 17 of 21.
Anish, thank you very much. Here's Felipe Lopez on the night, 2 for 5. He was the man who started the uprising in the very first inning for St. Louis against Johan Santana. You would not have believed it was Santana unless you saw it with your own eyes, as he surrendered 6 runs on 8 hits, the worst first inning of the left-hander's career. And yet the Mets would eventually come back to tie it in the 8th inning with 4 runs. And here we are in the 10th at 7-7. Lopez had 2 hits last night in the Mets victory. Came up with a big one in the 11th inning Sunday go-ahead home run off of Ryan Schlitter on a 3-2 pitch with 2 outs to give the Cards a 4-3 lead. They would hold on for the win.
That was in the 11th inning after they had lost the previous 3 games.
Taps that one foul. That was one day after he arrived late to the ballpark, and Tony La Russa scratched him from the lineup. Both said by Sunday, and certainly his heroics on Sunday helped, that they had already turned the page on it.
You know, you wonder how many times K-Rod has been asked to go more than 1 inning. He did it once back in April. He did it again in May. He did it in June, and he just did it on July the 18th. So not out of the norm here.
1-2 low, 2 balls, 2 strikes. John Jay, who's had a nice night, 3 for 5, waiting on deck for the Cardinals. A lot of offense here tonight, a total of 26 hits. St. Louis has 14 of them. K-Rod throwing his 23rd pitch here. Slapped on 1 bounce right up and into Hessman. He'll do it himself. 1-2-3 go the Cardinals. A very quiet 10th inning. Jose Reyes will be the 3rd man due up in the bottom of the 10th. The Mets with another chance to win it at home in front of the home crowd. Josh Thole, who's made a really fine impression on the New York Mets front office, swinging an excellent bat. The rookie catcher will lead off the 10th inning against the new pitcher for St. Louis, Trevor Miller, the 37-year-old veteran.
Over the last 7 years, there's been no left-handed pitcher in baseball with more appearances. Normally, like Reyes, just called upon to get 1 or 2 hitters out. He may be out there for a while.
Neither one of these teams are terrific in extra innings. The Mets are 4-7, and the Cardinals are 3-5. David Wright chatting with his manager.
Well, the only real area that the Mets are good at against these Cardinals are playing here at home. They're 12-6 against Tony La Russa's team since the beginning of 2006.
Mets staging a great comeback in the 8th inning to tie the game. Miller is the 18th man to play in the ball game for Tony La Russa.
Josh Thole's last at bat was against a left-handed Cardinal reliever, Dennis Reyes.
A little pop up on the infield, charging and catching it here. Miles right off the end of the bat for Thole. He's retired. 1 man out. And Cora will now come up to bat. So Alex Cora goes from his leadership position on the bench, his cheerleader spot, to into the ball game.
Well, the only thing Jerry Manuel has left on his bench is supposedly Jason Bay. I didn't see Jason at all before the ball game today. I just saw his name on the active list. I don't know if he's here or not. You would doubt if there's anything he could do.
Cora hitting just .213, no homers and 20 runs batted in. Tends to be a very pesky hitter. And can spoil good pitches. Jose Reyes is on deck for the Mets.
I just love that story you told about they had lost the ball game and all of a sudden some people were cutting up or whatever, getting a little excited, and he just jumped all over them, huh?
He let them have it with both barrels. And Cora is a very highly respected player. A little floater into right, and Jay covers the ground for the second out.
Kind of easy to see why a lot of people think he's going to be a big league manager someday.
That's been said of Alex for a long time, and he's one of the more intelligent players that you're ever going to encounter. 2 up, 2 down for Reyes, who has been on base on 3 occasions tonight. He's bunted for a hit. He's singled another time. He's also taken ball 4, officially 1 for 3. I should say a 2 for 4. And the first pitch is in there for strike 1. He has hit in 9 in a row. And Reyes is capable of turning one around. Last night he belted a 2-run homer. And the Mets win. Liner sinking quickly. That's going to drop down for a base hit. So the fastest man on the diamond takes a wide turn, and he'll settle for his 3rd single.
Well, and not really the situation that Tony La Russa wanted, but because of the lack of depth now in his bullpen, he had to leave his left-hander in to face the switch-hitting Jose Reyes. You've got speed now. You've got another switch hitter coming to home plate. And for the Mets, you've got another one in the on-deck circle in Pagan. Mike McDougal. Remember him? Long time with the Kansas City Royals, Washington. Just got to the ballpark today to join the Cardinals because they thought they needed some more depth.
Castillo will bat right-handed with 2 down. Reyes will be kept close. He has stolen 20 bases. Been caught 4 times. As you pointed out, that man behind the plate, Yadier Molina, tends to be a roadblock. But the Mets scuffle so badly for offense. Will they run him here? And with a left-hander on the mound.
You know what? I mean, Reyes is always on his own. I wouldn't run him here. I'm surprised that Tony La Russa's outfield is playing so shallow. Normally in a situation like this, you play deep. I know Castillo didn't have a lot of power, but you try to cut a ball in the gap off. If it gets to the wall, Reyes is probably going to score. The game will be over. It's almost like Tony right now is stalling for time with 3 consecutive throws. I don't. If he brings in McDougal, then you know Reyes is going to run because he's a right-hander. Castillo from the right side has a little bit more power than the left. He could find the wall here on the ground.
Runner goes, got a great jump. Here's Molina's throw. The tag. He is out.
There's not a better throwing. He's the best defensive catcher in baseball.
Boy, despite a terrific jump by one of the fastest men in the majors, Molina pegs it down there and gets it. Well, why do you run on Molina?
There's a lot of catchers that wouldn't even attempt that throw. They would have just kept the ball in their hand. Look at the jump. Think about the speed. But look at the perfect throw. And think about the arm strength that took. You can see Reyes kind of look back at him like, you've got to be kidding me. No, I'm not kidding you. My name is Yadier Molina.
Let's toss it back to the studio.
Meanwhile in Cleveland, Alex Rodriguez. Thank you, guys. Alex Rodriguez at the plate. 1 strike count. Another chance at number 600. Let's take a listen on the yes coverage. Ken Singleton, John Flaherty.
The 0-1 pitch. That's outside, and it's 1-1. The flash bulbs go off. I should say the flashes go off. Don't use flash bulbs anymore.
And again, another young Indian pitcher who is not intimidated, coming right at Alex Rodriguez. Couple of fastballs.
1-1 pitch. There's the breaking ball when that drops in first strike. 1-2.
Good pitch. Back-to-back fastballs and then a little 12-6. You see Alex flinch a little bit.
And had a good break to it. Two and two. Pitch is fouled back. He had a high fastball to go after. And I got a piece of Dale Scott. He looks at the number of the ball that he's going to put in play.
Just a little bit above his belt and a good swing. Alex had a slider to hit earlier in this ball game and just missed it, but that was a quality pass and a good fastball just above his belt.
You get the feeling eventually he's going to catch somebody speeding.
Yeah, usually that's a good sign for Alex. I mean, that'd be that one spot, Kenny, up and in where pitchers, when Alex isn't going right, they could beat him inside. That's where Herman tried to go. Alex had a pretty good swing.
2-2 pitch. Way outside. The count is now full at 3-2.
Well, we saw that good curveball earlier in the at-bat from Herman. We'll see if he tries to drop it here 3-2 or if he's proud of his fastball and attacks.
Nobody on 2 outs. Here's the payoff pitch. Fastball fouled at the plate. Santana going to walk this one off.
Well, Herman not messing around, coming right at Alex with that fastball. It's down, probably a ball out of the zone. Catches a piece of Santana.
And some of the people who are leaving, they must have thought A-Rod struck out. If they turn around, take a glance, he's still up there, folks. A-Rod checking with Santana to make sure the youngster's okay. And we're going to have another 3-2 pitch. Herman shook off a sign. Here's the 3-2 pitch. Fastball fouled at the plate. It's a game of challenge right now. Now, every time a ball is fouled off, they put another one of the specially marked balls in play. Three-two pitch. Swung on, bouncing ball, foul.
Alex had a pitch to hit right there. You can see he's a little frustrated with that swing. Though it sounded like a broken record, I'm impressed with these young kids coming right at him, and that was a fastball right down Broadway.
Ooh, that was it. Here is the 10th pitch of this at-bat.
Power against power. See who wins.
Pitch is popped up into right field. Shelley Duncan coming on. He'll make the catch. Alex Rodriguez is retired. And the Yankees go in order.
Without a home run. So A-Rod 5 at-bats without a home run in this game. Meanwhile, the Cardinals and Mets now in the top of the 11th inning at Citi Field. Let's go back to Dave and Rick, guys.
Anish, thank you very much. Been a very entertaining night here in New York. A 7-7 tie. John Jay is the batter. He's the leadoff man here in the 11th inning against Bobby Parnell, the right-hander, hard-throwing righty for the Mets. 2-2 pitch, sails high. 3-2. Jay has 3 hits tonight. As you look at Parnell's numbers.
Really the tough part of both of these lineups to try to get through. Just the 19th appearance, no record as of yet. You can see that very few walks, with just 1 pitch away from walking the leadoff guy with Albert Pujols in the on-deck circle.
3-2 on the way, and that missed for ball 4. So Parnell, who has been a Jerry Manuel favorite since they brought him up from AAA, walks the leadoff man. He has a 9-inning scoreless streak going, and that's why Manuel feels very confident about bringing him into a spot like this. But now it's Albert Pujols. With a runner at first base, nobody out. 7-7 our score. What a good night for John Jay, huh? 4 times on base, 3 singles, and now what could prove to be a very important walk.
Kind of interesting that all those times on base and he's only scored 1 run.
Here's Albert. He's 2 for 5 with 2 singles. In there for called strike 1. Well, you're nervous if you're a Met fan because it's Albert Pujols, but it's also his 6th at bat without an extra base hit yet. So that should really concern you.
I'm telling you what, I don't think he's at 100%. He would never tell you. I mean, I'm fine. Looking forward to playing. We need to win this game. That's all you ever hear from him.
Want that one off foul. The count 0-2.
But he has really not squared up a ball thus far tonight. And we've seen a lot of pitches that he's had, just like that last one. Fastballs that are up and out over the plate that normally find the barrel of his bat. That has always been something physical with Albert, but it's weeks or months later before you find out anything.
His 3 hits in his last 24 at bats. For him, that's a pretty serious skid. Jay at first base, nobody out. Top of the 11th. And time asked for and granted. At the last moment, Darryl Cousins granted that to Pujols.
I don't think Mike Hessman gets that time from Darryl.
Pretty good bet.
Cousins. You know, a lot of people thinking doubles right now. The Cardinals hoping that Pujols can hit a double. Of course, the Mets thinking they'd like for him to hit into a double play.
Yeah, and if he does, it'll be his 18th. He's among the league leaders in that category. Jay at first. Rattle to third. Into second one. A little bobble there, but he's going to be safe at first base because Hessman could not dig it out. It almost looked like Albert gave up on it at first base as he pulled up. But he is safe.
Something's physically wrong. I mean, he pulled up right there at first base. This should have been a double play. There's the throw. I don't know why. It looked like Castillo got there late. Jay all over him there. He double pumps. And then nobody able to handle it. I mean, if Hessman's able to come up with that, he's out. But Albert slowed down about 10 feet. Look at that. I mean, he's going hard, and then all of a sudden something happened. I mean, I mean, to me, that's the lower back. That's what I saw him grabbing during batting practice, and I'm just wondering if there's not something wrong with that.
Well, I've never seen Albert Pujols.
No.
You and I have done 25, 30 Albert Pujols games. I've never seen him not hustle through the bag. Here's Holiday. He's doubled and homered. So, you know, that's the first thing you think of.
Yeah.
With Albert Pujols.
There's something wrong, and obviously he will explain that after the ball game because he doesn't want kids here watching the game thinking that that's the way he's ever played. He never has played it like that.
Of course, we can't draw a conclusion definitively because we don't. If he's not going to tell anybody he's hurt.
I'll give you a conclusion. I think that should be E4. I know it's never scored that way, but what's so difficult about making a 90-foot throw?
Of course, you cannot assume a double play, and that's the reason you cannot charge an error. But there was certainly a bobble there by Castillo. He had all sorts of time.
Oh.
One man out for Holiday. He dribbles that one to Reyes, to Castillo. This one he hangs on to and turns the double play. 6-4-3. We go to the last half of the 11th inning. Rolling deep into the night. David Wright, always a home run threat, due up for the Mets in a 7-7 tie on a Wednesday night. A very unhappy Albert Pujols going back out to play defense. And we don't know if Albert is hurt. There's no way of knowing, and particularly if he is hurt and he won't say. We can't be mind readers here, but watching him pull up at first base on what looked to be a certain double play ball, even with the bobble by Castillo. Albert Pujols pulled up there at first base and did not run hard through the bag. I guess you could say this is always the first time, but it's so out of character for him.
Well, and just watching the swing there, and then he gives it everything he has, and then all of a sudden it's like, to me, if he kept going, he felt like he was going to blow something out. I'm guessing that it's his back. He wouldn't say anything to me during batting practice, but visibly, this is the maddest I've ever seen him when I didn't know exactly what it was.
You wonder if he's mad at his body for failing him. That's in there for a strike on Luis Castillo.
I mean, he glared back in the direction of Tony La Russa as he took the field. I'm guessing as if to say, you know, I'm hurt. And then after the infield the ball was thrown down, he fired the ball he had in against the railing.
The only history for Albert Pujols is of a guy who gives everything he has. So that's why you begin to knock around in your head. Well, he's got to be hurt.
I saw him play that way in high school. I mean, he grew up in Kansas City, where I was born and raised. I've seen him play a long time.
You saw him give 100% all the time.
Every time. In junior college.
Well, he in the end was safe, but he was fortunate to be safe. In a 7-7 game.
Well, and you know, on the ground ball hit by Holiday, he would try to broke up that double play.
Miles ranging, gets it, and gets the hitter. Castillo out at first base, one away in the last of the 11th inning. And that'll bring up Pagan. Well, when this game got underway, it was in shocking fashion as Johan Santana, one of the best pitchers in the majors, with a 2.79 ERA and an ERA under 1 in the month of July, gave up 6 runs. Just like that on 8 hits. It was the worst first inning he's ever had. He also surrendered 13 hits tonight in 5 2/3. That was the most hits he's ever allowed in a start. But the Cardinals since have scored 1 run. And for the Mets, the big inning was the bottom of the 8th when they scored 4 times. They stunned the Cardinals, and Pagan was the guy who really got it started with the big blow.
Well, after a base hit by Castillo, he came up and deposited one down there into the bullpens. That gave at least a little bit of life to the crowd here.
And the other key hit was Ike Davis coming off the bench for Jerry Manuel. He's really managed an outstanding game, and he drove a 2-run single through the right side to tie it.
I've just been really impressed with the energy that was still in that Mets dugout. The positive vibes we talked about coming out of that clubhouse this year that haven't really been there in the past. The last couple of years they haven't been there. But boy, you saw Cora that continued to cheer.
And Molina having an extended conversation here with Darryl Cousins.
Well, Molina's about the only one that can get thrown out. The only position player Tony La Russa has is Jason LaRue, the backup catcher.
That didn't look angry, though. That didn't look tremendously animated.
You don't know what he's saying.
2-0 pitch. And a count now 3-0.
Guys had a great shot in the dugout of Molina and Dave Duncan talking about some pitches, and you saw him put up the 2 as if to say he missed at least 2 of them.
3-0 drops in there for a strike on Pagan. Along with his 2-run homer, he's also doubled tonight and walked and scored.
Hasn't stolen the base yet, but he's certainly capable of that.
He is 23 for the Mets. Waved right through it on an 81-mile-an-hour off-speed pitch. 3-2.
How far has Pagan come? He's a guy that couldn't stay healthy, that couldn't play every day, that everybody kind of thought was that 4A, 4th outfielder. Now he's getting 3-1 changeups.
This payout pitch popped up. That'll keep on drifting off to the right. Here comes Albert, and he's going to make the catch on the warning track. And Molina wasn't going to get there. Albert Pujols did, right in front of the Met dugout, and there are 2 gone.
Just kind of acts like it hurts every step that he takes. There it's popped up, and look at him. I mean, not moving as well as we've seen him. Albert normally would have gotten to the rail and been there underneath it, but it was just all he could do to get there.
2 down, bases empty for David Wright. Last 3 times up, he has a hit. All singles. He's also scored a run. He's gone 3 for 5. Lopez, the third baseman, is behind the bag and guarding that line, trying to prevent the extra base hit. 7-7 our score. Cardinals trying to get this thing to 12. Mets trying to end it right here. And Wright has hit 15 homers. Of course, it is a big ballpark, Citi Field.
Wright doesn't hit many of those homers here. Only 4. But of course, last year only 10 home runs, and there for a long time, he wasn't sure that he could get it out of here or not.
Jason Bay, their big off-season acquisition, has had a devil of a time here. The Mets actually did a study to find out if Citi Field would cost Bay home runs and determined it would not. But he's only hit 3 home runs here all season long.
Who did that study?
They are no longer employed by the New York Mets, is my guess. He's only hit 6 home runs in 2010. Bay out of the lineup tonight because of concussive symptoms after running into the wall in Los Angeles 4 days ago. Here comes the 350th pitch of the ball game. Just in case you're keeping track at home, 3 balls, 2 strikes. If you are, seek help.
I'm just shocked that you're keeping track. I mean, I kept them of Santana and Garcia, but
Tapper Miller off the hill, throws and gets him, and that'll do it. The Mets go 1-2-3. So we continue to play on here in New York City tonight. Molina has been a big part of it tonight with a great throw. He's going to lead off when we go to the 12th in a 7-7 game. The X Games begins on ESPN tomorrow, 1 at 2 Eastern. Catch coverage of BMX Park and Skateboard Street Elimination. Then at 8 Eastern, see finals coverage of Moto X Freestyle, Super X, Women's Super X, and Skateboard Big Air. X Games 16 on ESPN tomorrow. Parnell remaining on to pitch here. As we go to the 12th inning, 7 runs, 14 hits for the Cardinals. 7 runs, 13 hits for the Mets. Neither side has made an error. So it's been a very clean game from that viewpoint. And Yadier Molina, who has a base hit that was way back in the 1st inning, and he has scored a run, but also made a tremendous throw to cut down Reyes, who was trying to steal a base in extra innings. Reyes at the end of the 10th, despite getting a great jump, and Molina with that howitzer threw him out. In there for strike 1.
kind of interesting. Parnell, going to high school in North Carolina, was a goalie in soccer for the 4 years that he was there. Kind of doing the same thing right now, trying to keep the opponent from scoring.
1 ball and 1 strike.
A little bit of trouble last year. The Mets really couldn't figure out what to do with him. Had a lot of appearances, actually had 8 starts. I think he has found the role that he is best suited for. Hard thrower.
1-1 socked into right field for a base hit. Francoeur to scoop it up, and a solid start in the 12th inning. Leadoff single by Molina.
That was really the one thing that Molina did so well last year, when the average was well up above where it is now. Kind of looks like a tired man, doesn't it? All the innings that he's caught this year.
And tonight, Manuel heading to the hill. Molina's been catching for 11 innings, and now he has to run.
No reason to go out to Jerry Manuel now if you're not making a move.
So a pitching change here. It'll be Pedro Feliciano, the left-hander, when we come back to Citi Field. The Cardinals and the Mets love to play baseball. Look at the length of the ball game on April 17. 20 innings in 6 hours and 53 minutes. And tonight, we're not done yet. In the 12th inning, 13 total pitchers have been used. And this after St. Louis led 6-0.
But who started both of those affairs?
Same 2 guys who started tonight, Santana and Jaime Garcia. Well, here comes Pedro Feliciano, left-hander out of the bullpen with a man at first. And so Colby Rasmus will dig in. He was part of the uprising in the first with a double. It was one of 8 hits off Johan Santana.
Feliciano leads the major leagues in appearances. This is the 57th time he'll be on this year for the New York Mets.
Fastball in for a strike. Rasmus certainly a home run guy with 16 of them, although he came into the night in a 1-for-25 slump. He may be out of it though with 2 hits. 7-7 game in the 12th inning. That one missed badly. 1 ball, 1 strike. Cardinals need to win to stay in a first-place tie with the Cincinnati Reds, who thumped Milwaukee 10-2 earlier today. That was hours ago. This game is fast approaching the 4-hour mark. And the only reason they're still playing is because of a wonderful comeback by the Mets. And the Mets are not a comeback team, as they scored 4 times in the bottom of the 8th inning. A called strike says Darryl Cousins, and a count 2-2.
Rasmus has put up some big power numbers this year. Had 16 homers before the break, but does not have any as of yet since the All-Star game.
Molina on at first base. Of course, not much speed at all there. And is high to make it 3-2.
You wonder what Tony La Russa will do here. We've seen him hit and run already with Molina at home plate and Albert Pujols at first base. Pujols got into scoring position. Feliciano had a lot of success against left-handed hitters. Tough spot to send him.
On a hold 3-2 ground ball, softly hit. Reyes scoots to his right, gets the out there. No double play, as Castillo held on to it after getting the out at second. So Rasmus becomes the runner at first base with a man out. That's Adam Wainwright.
Yeah, don't laugh. I know you're not. Don't laugh at that. He's got a lot of power. I think he's got 5 home runs already in his career, and it's just getting started.
Of course, he makes his living as an outstanding starting pitcher.
Don't you think after the ball game last night he'd like to serve a little payback?
Sure. He really got blitzed last night. You're right. He has 5 home runs. Here's Aaron Miles as the throw goes to first base. Rasmus was on the bag. So we'll see if the Cardinals have a comeback in them. They had the first inning explosion. They've scored only 1 time since then. 1-0.
This could be a devastating loss. More than you could imagine for the St. Louis Cardinals. Not only with the big lead and thinking, with 6 runs, that game's supposed to be over with. But boy, you look at Molina and how he's struggling to get around the bases, and Albert Pujols, there could be something physically wrong with him.
Albert remaining in the dugout, but in a seated position. Your mind begins to spin about what might be wrong with him. If he does have some physical problem, and if he does, and that's why he didn't hustle to first base earlier, will he talk about it? He almost has to now.
He's going to have to talk about that effort to first base, because it just wasn't typical of him. You could just see it on his face that something's wrong.
Miles, a .317 hitter, but no homers. He lays off. It's up and away. 2-0.
You've got speed at first base. You've got contact at home plate. Miles with a long look at Jose Oquendo down there at first base. Excuse me, third base.
Well, that looks like a very amicable discussion there between La Russa and Pujols. That's a crossword called strike. Albert wearing a big smile.
Might be asking if you want to see Jason LaRue play first base. Oh, he'd probably put Molina at first and have LaRue catch. Molina's done that before.
2-1 pitch, chopped to the middle. Reyes there, taps the bag, gets the out on to first, double play. So we have rolled through 11 and a half innings. Still tied 7-7. It's Beltran, Hessman, and Frank Cord due to hit for the New York Mets at home. Here's Albert Pujols coming up the dugout steps in a very balky jog toward first base.
Well, that's what it looked like when he grounded into what should have been a double play. He just wasn't able to go any harder than that.
A couple of changes here. Mike McDougall, who just arrived here, the slender right-hander, He will take over on the hill for St. Louis, and LaRue will do the catching. So a whole new battery for Tony La Russa.
You know, it's one of those games where, a lot like the game back in April, where Mike Pelfrey, who had pitched 2 days before, had to come in and pick up the save. If it gets any deeper than that, I mean, you're going to see Wainwright. We already saw him grab a helmet and a bat. You're going to see some guys go in there and put their spikes on just to try to help this bullpen out because of the job they've already done.
So Molina, who looked dog-tired when he got to first base after his base hit, is done for the night. La Russa will get him out of there. And Carlos Beltran will lead off here in the bottom of the 12th inning in a 7-7 game here at Citi Field.
You know, thinking back to Tony La Russa on the bench with his superstar MVP Albert Pujols, and Pujols laughing, I would imagine that conversation was, who you want to come out or Molina? You both are hurt. You both are banged up. We got nobody. I can only take one of you out. And it was almost, might have been like Albert was laughing, like, you know what, he's the catcher. I mean, he's got a much tougher position than I've got. To get him out of there, and I'll give you all I got.
So Pujols stays on, and here's Beltran. He clubbed a home run in the 6th inning. And he's gone 2 for 4 tonight.
You know, I came into Tony La Russa's office, and I saw the extra men and the lineup, and I wrote it down. I said, McDougal, yeah. And, you know, he looked at me like, yeah, why? Well, you know, Salas last night had pitched 2 innings, 41 pitches. They knew they were a little thin there. You know, you worry about tomorrow's ball game. They've got Blake Hawksworth on the mound, which you never know. You know, he's not a normal starting rotation guy. So McDougal was brought up, and I mean, I asked a lot of players. I said, McDougal here? Can you tell me? You know, we remember him from Kansas City. Nah, I didn't even know he was here. Some of the players saying that.
Beltran hit his first home run of the season. Remember, he missed the first half because of that knee situation. Homered in the 6th. Socks that one into left field, backing up Holiday with room to make the catch. He's there. One man out in the Met 12th. And now a guy who can really run into one. He's done it so many times at the minor league level. Mike Hessman has also homered 13 times in the big leagues during his brief call-ups to the majors with Atlanta and Detroit. He's played in 168 major league games coming into this season.
You're talking a lot about home runs here in the extra innings.
It's just coincidence.
Okay.
Is what he did back in the first inning. He just missed one.
Boy, he really did. This was on an 0-2 pitch from Garcia. If that ball gets out, it would have been 6-4. It did make the score 6-2. Gave a little bit of life at that time to these Mets fans.
If that had not happened, here comes Duncan heading out to the mound. But if that hadn't happened, if Hessman hadn't ripped that one off the wall and brought in 2 runs, you wonder how much life would have been left in the Mets, even though that was the first inning, to be able to come back and tie the ball game in the 8th. He chipped away and knotted the score, and we are at 7-7 ever since.
You know, when you look at that lineup and you think about Santana and you think about K-Rod in the bullpen, and you know, you don't see this team struggling to stay over 500. I mean, they were fortunate to win a game on that last road trip to the West Coast.
I think for both teams it would be a really, really tough loss. Certainly for St. Louis after blowing a 6-0 lead up and in by McDougal. But for the Mets too, rallying the way they did, and with everything that has happened in this Mets season, you know, with Howard Johnson's position maybe on the line as the hitting coach of the Mets, and a lot of talk about Jerry Manuel, the manager, as well. That one low and off the mitt of LaRue, 3-0. Both Philadelphia and Atlanta have already won inside their division. Looks like the Phillies are starting to get hot. And indeed, they have won 7 in a row. This has really been a haven for the Mets to be able to play at home. They played really well here. That's in for a strike with a record of 31-16.
You know, we've talked many times, you and I, about a conversation I had my rookie year with the Dodger manager Walter Alston about how in a one-run ball game, one manager or the other will make a decision that determines the outcome. How that's really the game. That's really the only game that a manager has a lot to do with. 2 or 3 run leads, normally it's a starting pitcher. More than that, it's always someone or somebody's offensively that went off. This very well could be a one-run decision.
Hot shot, diving play, Lopez up and gunning. The stretch by Pujols and got him. Nice dig by Albert, and a fine play by Lopez. And they're 2 down.
Boy, that really was. You got a ball that's hit really hard. It was a 3-1 count. Hessman knew that it was going to be a fastball. Look at the dive. He comes up with it, sets himself, and knows he's got to hurry the throw. Anytime you got to hurry it, if you got Albert Pujols there at first, if you think down, he might be able to help you. That ball gets by Albert Pujols. You got a man on second or third with only 1 out. It changes the ball game.
Here's Frank Gore. Tried to hold up, but he went. That's a swinging strike. Now, the Mets in one-run games have really suffered.
11-20. And they lost a bunch of them just on this last West Coast trip where, you know, one decision one way or another might have made the difference. Cardinals right around 500 in one-run games this year.
Tied 7-7. Miles will scoop, fire, and get it. And it's a 1-2-3. That'll do it for the New York Mets. We are going on to the 13th inning on this Wednesday night. Still locked up 7-7. Top of the 13th inning, Cardinals and the Mets 7-7 on a Wednesday night. It started quickly for St. Louis. Holiday with a 2-run homer off Santana as part of a 6-run first inning against the talented left-hander. Reyes couldn't get to the base hit. And the hits and the runs just kept on coming, all varieties, even dribblers. Wright had trouble getting that one out of his glove. But in the 8th inning, Mets were down by 4. They rallied. Holiday could not make a catch. There would be a key home run as well by Pagan. And then Ike Davis came off the bench and wrapped a 2-run game-time single. And not at the score at 7. It's been our score ever since.
You know, kind of interesting that, you know, all of the headlines to begin with are about the star players and the starting pitchers, and it happens to be a guy that wasn't even in the starting lineup, Ike Davis, coming off the bench, that tied this ball game up with 2 outs and put us into the 13th inning where we're at right now.
So Jason LaRue will step in for the first time tonight, and Feliciano remains on the hill for the Mets here. To the 13th inning we go. Total of 28 hits, 15 of those by St. Louis. LaRue just at 208 with a pair of home runs. Doesn't get on base all that much. He chops that one back to the hill right on top of the mound. Feliciano zips it over for the out. Neither side mounting much here deep into extra innings.
You know, kind of surprising too that before this inning, 3 out of the last 4 innings, the Cardinals got the leadoff man on base and not able to manufacture in some way, shape, or form a run to take the lead.
Not much going on in the bullpen. Valdez and Oliver Perez are the only remaining Mets.
You knew it would be Valdez before it would be Oliver.
Rocketed but foul on first base as Schumacher pulled it. He's 1 for 5 with a single and an RBI tonight. That was in the first inning. And the Cardinals did almost all of their scoring.
You know, I know they've got to cover the lines, which they're doing on the infield. I'm still surprised at the outfield depth.
That hit him. Schumacher gets drilled. Drops the bat. He'll head to first base. It's a painful way to get on, but Schumacher is aboard. The trainer will come out along with Tony La Russa.
Tony don't even want to come out. He doesn't really have anywhere to go, even if there is something broke. Boy, that thing hit hard. I mean, we could hear that all the way up here.
Let's take a listen to it.
You know, with that delivery of Feliciano, a left-handed hitter, you try to stay in there as long as you can in case a breaking ball. And boy, if it's not, and it starts out in that area, that you have nowhere to go.
You get some wounded soldiers out there for St. Louis, but they're out of position players, so there's no place to go. Pujols hurting right now, and certainly Schumacher is as well.
I bet Feliciano's hurting a little bit. I mean, talked about him leading the majors in appearance with 57, but I mean, he's closing in on 40 innings pitched. This is out of the norm for him.
Felipe Lopez had 2 hits in the first inning tonight and has not had a hit since. A pair of singles, a run scored, and an RBI.
You'd think that's a great day. I mean, it's a good day no matter what. Well, this could end up right here being 2 for 7. Look at this.
3-0.
Home plate starting to get away from him.
1 down, a man on, and a suddenly wild Feliciano. John Jay on deck, 3 hits tonight. Real pitch taking all the way, 3-1.
As a manager, you just bring your pitching coach over. What's going on here? Jerry Manuel walked right up to Dan Worthen. He's up there by him again. Is he going to be able to get out of it? I can't wait too long. You know what my options are. Am I better off going down to the bullpen if this hitter gets on base? All of those things going through the mind of Jerry Manuel.
3-1. He asked for time here.
Well, he's trying to make sure that he knows what's going on with Schumacher. One of those decisions again as a manager. For Tony La Russa, do you send him?
Not running. Fouled away, 3-2. I'll tell you another thing about the right fielder on deck, John Jay. You have to throw him strikes. He has a very good eye. And walked his last time up.
When he came up earlier this year, he was swinging the bat well, but you know what? Not well enough to stay, and he wasn't walking. He wasn't seeing very many pitches. Well, he's been a complete player since he's been back the second time.
Schumacher back in. We're tied up 7-7. If you're just joining us, we're in the top half of the 13th inning. And where have you been? We're almost 4.5 hours in.
You got to figure he's going here. If you're able to locate a good strike here, the strike him out, throw him out could be in order.
Schumacher does take off, and he missed badly. Ball 4. So with 1 out, a hit batsman, and now a walk, and now Jay with the opportunity to put St. Louis back in the lead. And Dan Worthen is heading out to the hill. Time for us to toss it back to the studio for a Baseball Tonight in-game update. And Anish.
Thank you, Dave. Alex Rodriguez went 2 for 5, had an RBI single, also doubled, did not hit a home run. He's still stuck on 599. Now 6 games without a home run. That's 26 at-bats since number 599. Let's go back out to New York. Dan and Rick. Dave and Rick.
That was the Yankees with an 8-0 victory over the Cleveland Indians, but no home runs tonight for A-Rod. And a batter will be Jay with Albert Pujols right behind him. Jay 3 for 5, 3 singles and a run. Jumps on the first one, fouls it away right there at the plate. at 7 here in the 13th inning. And that'll miss up high. 1 ball and 1 strike. Albert Pujols next.
Well, Tony La Russa's got to like what he sees. Men on base, Pujols on deck, and Ryan Franklin up in the bullpen.
2-1. Crowd getting a little disenchanted here with the left-hander. Franklin throwing in the pen for Tony La Russa.
Feliciano trying to close in on a quality start.
Hit softly. Castillo to Reyes. Got 1 and can't get 2. Runners safe on the corners. And with 2 men out. And that'll bring up Albert Pujols.
You know, we've talked about 1-run ball games and decisions made by managers. This is a tough one here. This is as tough as it gets right here. I mean, you've got the reigning MVP. Unanimous. Back-to-back MVPs. He's got 3 of them on his mantle at home. But the guy in the on-deck circle, I mean, he's already homered tonight. He started the scoring. Do you want to load the bases up? You can see that Feliciano's really struggling with his control. He's hit a guy. He's walked a guy. Well, you put him on. You put all the pressure in the world on him.
Well, they're going to pitch to him.
Maybe.
Very carefully.
Exactly. Exactly. That is a great point.
The go-ahead run at third here for St. Louis in the 13th inning. And Albert looks at a strike. 296, 23 homers, 70 RBIs.
Has never faced Feliciano. And that's not by Albert's choice. That's by the Mets' choice in the past. As long as these 2 guys have been in the big league.
Two down, runners on at first and third. That's a ball, 1-1 on Albert Pujols, the 3-time MVP. He has not had a good month. He's hit about 250 in July with 5 homers. But he's Albert Pujols. Liner and a base hit. That brings in a run, and it makes it 8-7 St. Louis. They have the lead back. Schumacher scores. Remember, he got on by getting hit by that pitch.
You know what they're going to do in the newspapers and all over the media tomorrow here in New York if that is the game-winning hit. You've got a base open. How do you let the reigning MVP face a left-handed pitcher? Feliciano doing everything he can. I mean, he's trying to gut it out and get through this inning. Not able to do that with 2 outs. The Cardinal first baseman comes through again.
And Franklin will be ready with his 18 saves. The Cardinals have the lead back 8-7 here in the 13th inning. And they're going to go ahead and put Holiday on. So they'll walk him. And this will load up the bases. And Adam Wainwright is going to grab a bat. And one of the best starting pitchers in the National League will step in. So an intentional walk of Holiday, who's driven in 3 runs tonight. Sports Center coming your way as soon as this ball game finishes up here in New York. Manuel will take the ball away. Feliciano had a very rough 13th inning. There's an unintentional walk and a hit batsman. 8-7. Valdez coming on. St. Louis up by 1. Is Adam Wainwright getting some suggestions from one of the great hitters in the game. He says something about a first pitch here. You can read his lips as he walks away. First pitch. So it looks like Wainwright will be hacking if he takes Albert's advice, and why shouldn't he? As Raul Valdez comes out of the bullpen, a left-hander. 2-2 with an ERA just over 4. This will be his 28th appearance.
Well, Valdez has already given up one Grand Slam home run earlier this year. Adrian Gonzalez of the Padres got him. We talked earlier when Wainwright was out on the on-deck circle. He has 5 career homers. He's not hit any this year, but one number that jumps off the stat sheet to me about Wainwright, he's walked 6 times as a pitcher already this year.
So has an idea. 4 doubles this season. So the bases are loaded up for the St. Louis Cardinals, who have retaken the lead 8-7. And he checks on the first one. Did he offer? He did.
Now how does
DJ Rayburn rings him up, and it's 0-1.
I think everybody in the ballpark saw that he went on this pitch, but Darryl Cousins did.
Incidentally, Albert Pujols started the game 0 for 3 and now has 3 hits his last 4 times up, including the go-ahead RBI base hit. That's off the catcher. Tolley. Here comes the run. Underhand toss. The tag, and he got him. And that is out number 3. And that's how the inning comes to an end. But the St. Louis Cardinals have retaken the lead here, trying to win late into the night in New York City. St. Louis in front 8-7, and now trying to put it away and square the series at 1 game apiece at Citi Field. Let's take a look at our value player, brought to you by Denny's. Albert, as mentioned, his last 4 times up, has 3 hits, and he's just put them in the lead. The Cardinals ahead 8-7.
Well, he deserves so much credit for so many things, and one of them is tonight, him being able to just gut out what has been an injury-filled night. He's not been healthy. We've seen him have trouble running down the bases. Gives it everything he got, and then it's almost like he knows if he continues, he's going to blow something out. I don't know if it's his back. I don't know if it's his legs. We're going to find out at some point. But you can see there, I mean, it's just killing him to try to get out there. But what happened? All of a sudden in the 13th inning with 2 outs and the go-ahead run at third base, he reaches back, and somehow Clark Kent once again becomes Superman.
So not showing off much power tonight, but plenty of hits, and certainly one in the clutch. And the Cardinals lead it by a run. I think if they win this ballgame, they're going to feel like they had to win it twice.
You know, you just kind of, you see him with his hands on his hips like he's trying to support something, and I see him continue to kick. It's like his right leg might be it. Might be connected to some problems with the back.
Ryan Franklin coming out of the bullpen now for St. Louis. He saved 18 games. The closer 5-1, an ERA of 3.12. This will be his 38th appearance. And trying to lock it down for St. Louis. The Cardinals had a 6-0 lead as they jumped all over Johan Santana, of all people, especially the month that Santana has put up to this point, where he's been brilliant. And the Mets were down 6-0 when they came up to bat for the first time in the first inning. But since then, the Mets have chipped away, got 4 runs in the 8th. They tied it at 7 then, and now the Cardinals have taken the lead in the 13th on the Albert Pujols RBI single.
You wonder about Jason Bay. Is he anywhere to be found? Is there any way he could possibly go up there to hit? Well, obviously he can't. Raul Valdez is out there in the on-deck circle. Why was there not someone added for Jason?
Fly ball by Tolley. Holiday turns to make the catch. And now Valdez, who came out of the bullpen, has to come up and bat here. So I've got to believe that Jason Bay is not in the ballpark. Unless he's going to spring a Kirk Gibson on us right here and come racing out of the dugout or hobbling out. And he hits the ball pretty well. He has 4 hits and 7 at bats. It's a small sample. He's about to see the 400th pitch of tonight's game. And takes a pretty good rip. Fouled it back for strike 1.
You know, I'll bet you're right. I'll bet Jason Bay is not even in the ballpark, or he would be fighting with Jerry Manuel to take a couple of swings.
Concussive symptoms. He ran into a fence in Los Angeles last Friday.
Well, he hit it hard too. It's just hard to believe it took 3 days before it was diagnosed as a concussion.
Valdez is actually wearing Mike Pelfrey's batting gloves. He doesn't even have batting gloves. Number 34 on the gloves. He wears the number 22. And lets the breaking ball go, and the count is 2-1. Well, it is the 13th inning. So strange things happen with lineups. Jose Reyes on deck. At least Valdez gives them a fighting chance because he can hit a bit. Franklin with a 2-1. Lost the bat. That goes hurtling down the right field line. And the count 2-2 now. Those batting gloves are not doing their job. Well, they're not his. So he can blame Pelfrey. And these don't belong to me. 1 out, base is empty. These two teams back in April played the longest game in the major leagues this season, 20 innings. The Mets would win that game in almost 7 hours. 7 minutes short of 7 hours. This one about 4.5. Here's the 2-2. Floated foul out of play. He'll get at least one more swing.
Tell you what, Ryan Franklin once again is just having an outstanding year as the closer for the St. Louis Cardinals. It's Dennis Eckersley-like with what Dave Duncan has done here. They had given up on Eckersley as a starting pitcher. It wouldn't happen. They decided to try the bullpen. Dave Duncan changed his mechanics a little bit. He took the ball out of the glove a little bit sooner, found a little more velocity, and found his way to Cooperstown. Ryan Franklin, the same thing. People had given up on him as a starting pitcher. And now look at him. 18 for 19 on the year, 5 wins.
2-2 swung on and missed, strike 3. So this ball game is 1 out away from coming to an end late into the night here in New York. An 8-7 St. Louis lead.
Well, with a loss here tonight, in 1-run decisions, the Mets will fall to 11-21. Jerry Manuel's going to have a lot of questions. You know, there's not a lot of people here left, but all the media is still here. They're going to wonder, why did you pitch to Pujols in that situation? How can you let him beat you? And, you know, once again, you ran out of position players.
Here's Jose Reyes trying to get on. He takes a strike. That's maybe down to their last hitter. When you talk about a number like 11-21, that's something else that, even though I thought Jerry Manuel had an excellent game, until it was time to decide to pitch to Pujols or not, he has to answer for that, doesn't he?
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
I mean, a major league manager will win you 1-run games, find a way to do it. Not going to happen tonight. A fly into left center. Coming on, Holiday makes the catch, and in 13 innings, the Cardinals win it. Albert Pujols with a big hit. That's been said before, and the Cardinals hang on to win it 8-7.
Really a gutty performance by the St. Louis Cardinals. It was a complete team effort. After they lost a 6-0 lead, it looked like they might lose Albert Pujols to an injury. They come back. They scored all 8 runs with 2 outs in this ball game, and it's so interesting that I asked a lot of the players about Mike McDougal, and they go, "Who is he?" I said, "Well, he's here. He's on the roster." He picks up the win tonight.
In 13 innings, 8 runs on 16 hits for the Cardinals, 7 runs on 13 hits for the Mets. Not a single error in the ball game, despite 4 hours and 32 minutes of baseball. Again, the final score: the Cardinals 8 and the Mets 7. Next on ESPN, it's SportsCenter. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For our Wednesday night crew, we say good night from Citi Field, and thanks so much for watching all night. Now, here's SportsCenter.